Chapter 876. Thinking about it, he really didn't have any suitable subordinates. Yelu Yi nodded. If that's the case, then I'll have to trouble Uncle. Helianjin smiled. Rest assured, Your Highness, I won't disappoint Your Highness' expectations. After I leave, the battle with the Mahist army will be as big as possible. If we can't fight, then we'll just have to defend. Once the Shilin and Dechu state armies move, the pressure on Your Highness will immediately lessen. Yelu Yi nodded. I understand. Helianjin glanced at Helian Peng, who was still kneeling on the ground. He said hesitantly, Helian Peng. Yelu Yi didn't like Helian Peng, so he didn't tell him to get up. Helian Peng could only continue to kneel. Get up. Yelu Yi said indifferently. Go back to your tent and stay there. I'll see what I can tell him to do later. Helianjin also knew that it was useless to say more. He could only nod. Thank you, Your Highness, for your forgiveness. Helian Peng stood up. Thank you, Your Highness. Yelu Yi snorted, too lazy to pay attention to him. Leaving the tent and returning to Helianjin's tent, Helian Peng knelt down again. Father, please punish me. Helianjin looked at him coldly for a long time before finally asking, Did I tell you that Spirit Vulture Mountain only needed to be defended? Who told you to fight to the death with Princess Ding? Helian Peng lowered his head in silence. Helianjin stared at him and said coldly, His Highness summoned you back. With your intelligence, how could you not see that it was my intention? You actually dared to disobey orders. Helian, I've always had high hopes for you, but ever since you left for battle, you've really disappointed me. Helian Peng was speechless. Not only was Helianjin disappointed in him, even Helian Peng was disappointed in himself. He never thought that he would actually lose to Princess Ding, and lose so miserably. Although Helian Peng was born in the northern tribes and was an orphan adopted by Helianjin, he was apprenticed to Murong Xiong, the #1 master of the Central Plains. He had been diligently studying martial arts and Central Plains culture. He had always felt that he was different from the people of the Central Plains who called him a barbarian. This kind of thinking did not change even when he followed his adoptive father to the battlefield and served under the 7th Prince. He even vaguely looked down on the high and mighty 7th Prince. However, after this defeat, he understood that the northern tribes weren't as stupid and reckless as he thought. In fact, they weren't any worse than him. At the very least, on the battlefield of the northern tribes, other than the main camp that was Prince Ding's enemy, the northern tribes had suffered the worst defeat among the other troops. It was only at this moment that Helian Peng truly calmed down and put himself in the position of a general to consider the problem. It was a pity that he had paid the price of the lives of hundreds of thousands of northern tribes soldiers. Seeing the defeated expression on Helian Peng's face, Helianjin sighed and said, Get up. You can't be blamed for everything that happened this time. You're not the first person to be defeated by Princess Ding. This is your first time on the battlefield, so it's inevitable that you'll overlook some things. As long as one was a man, it was inevitable that they would have the mentality of a male supremacy. Especially in this era, even if Yi Li's name shook the world, no matter how many people talked about how powerful Princess Ding was. Even her enemies knew that she wasn't a simple person, but they still underestimated her when they were dealing with her. It wasn't that they were arrogant or careless, but this was the inherent weakness of men in this era. They were too used to seeing women as weak and dependent on men. Even if there were a few powerful ones, there was a limit to how powerful they could be. Helian Peng stood up and said with some shame, Father, please forgive me. I won't make such a mistake again. Helianjin nodded and said, Father raised you up, taught you how to march and fight, and helped you learn martial arts from a master of the Central Plains. It was all for the sake of the day when you can defeat Mo Xiaoyao on behalf of Father, and also for yourself to achieve a great achievement. Don't disappoint Father. Helian Peng nodded and looked at Helianjin with some worry. Father, do you really plan to go to the Western Hill and persuade Lei Jinting to form an alliance with Mo Jingli and the northern tribes? Helianjin nodded and sighed. There's no hope of defeating the Mahist army with just the strength of the northern tribes. More importantly, once we lose, it won't be as simple as retreating from the central plains. I'm afraid that when we return to the royal house of the northern tribes, the Helian family and the seventh prince will no longer have a place to stand. Therefore, this battle can only be won and not lost. No matter what, we have to persuade Lei Zhenting to attack the Prince Ding mansion. I'm afraid Lei Zhenting won't be so easy to persuade. Helian Peng said. To persuade Lei Zhenting and Mo Jingli at the same time, Lei Zhenting had to give up a portion of the benefits that he had already obtained to Mo Jingli. How could Lei Zhenting so easily agree to give up what he already had in his hands in exchange for something that was still illusory in the future? Don't worry, I'm afraid that Lei Zhenting himself is also anxious to deal with the Prince Ding mansion. Helianjin smiled and said, Lei Zhenting isn't young anymore, but his son, Lei Tengfeng, doesn't have his father's great talent and bold vision. If something happens to Lei Zhenting in the future, the Prince Ding mansion's first target will be the Western Hill. Rather than that, Lei Zhenting will definitely choose to strike first. But the Dechu state and Mo Jingli have become his worries. As long as we resolve this worry for him, he will naturally agree to attack. Helian Peng was silent for a while before he raised his hands and said, Father is far-sighted, I am not as good as you. Helianjin patted his son's shoulder and said with a smile, Father needs to pack and prepare to leave. You go. I will leave. In the Mahist army camp, Prince Ding, who had finally waited for his beloved wife to return, was not able to enjoy the endless fortune of having a beautiful wife in his arms as he wished. He could only look pitifully at his beloved wife who was looking at him with an indifferent expression, his face full of grievance. Li, what's wrong? Who made you unhappy? Prince Ding carefully looked at Wang Fei and asked softly. Fortunately, there were only the two of them in the tent. Otherwise, the jaws of the Mahist army who did not know His Highness Prince Ding's true colors would drop. Even though he asked this, Mo Xiaoyao was very smart. How could he not know why Li was acting like this? As he looked at Yi Li, he quickly calculated in his mind who dared to ruin his plans. Yi Li raised her eyes and looked at him coolly. She said slowly, Prince is overthinking. Who can make me unhappy? Li. Finally unable to resist, Mo Xiaoyao leapt over and tightly hugged Yi Li's waist. His chin rubbed against her shoulder. Li, I was wrong. Yi Li finally looked at him seriously and asked coolly, what did Prince do wrong? I should not have run to the northern militant camp alone, Mo Xiaoyao hurriedly said as he glanced at Yi Li's expression. It would have been better if he did not mention it. Once he did, Yi Li's expression became even uglier. She laughed coldly and said, Prince Ding's martial arts are unparalleled in the world. Of course, there is no place he cannot go. What wrong is this? Prince, why did you hide it from me? If I knew earlier, I would have cheered for Prince. Even the concubine had come out. It seemed that she was really angry. Mo Xiaoyao complained inside. Prince Ding was not afraid of anything, but he was afraid of his beloved wife being angry. Feng Zhiyao always mocked him for being henpecked. That was true, but he was happy to endure it. Chapter 877. Li, I'm angry. What if you were really kidnapped by Helian Peng? At that time, I wanted to kill Helian Peng, then kill Helian Zhen and Yelu Yi. That way, no one would dare to hurt Li. Ignoring Yi Li's struggles, Mo Xiaoyao tightly held her in his arms, his voice somewhat muffled. Hearing this voice that seemed to contain a trace of grievance and panic, Yi Li only felt a throbbing pain in her heart. How could she still be angry? Lifting a hand, she gently stroked the silver hair that hung in front of her chest. Yi Li secretly sighed in her heart. Yi Li lifted Helian Peng's face that was leaning on her body and looked him in the eye. She said softly, I have many people protecting me. How can Helian Peng tie me up? But after I heard it, I was very scared. I couldn't control that feeling. I just want Li to stay by my side forever, not leaving for even a moment. Mo Xiuyao's low and hoarse voice showed his seriousness. Li only felt the rims of her eyes heat up, as if something was about to flow out. She could only lower her head and lean on his shoulder, saying in a low voice, "Haven't you thought about what if something happens to you? What would I do? What would Xiao Bao, Lin, and Xian do? If something happens to you, what would I do?" Mo Xiuyao only felt that these were the most moving words in the world. More than like, more than love, it made him feel extremely happy. Li had always been very independent and strong. These words, however, were the weakest words that Mo Xiuyao had ever heard her say. "I'll be fine. Even if it's for Li, I'll be fine." Mo Xiuyao happily promised. If everything went smoothly, he could even get away with the matter of charging into the northern militant camp alone. Then, he and Li could, "I said that I'll be fine and that you don't need to worry. Do you believe me?" Li raised her head and glanced at him indifferently. She happened to see a certain someone's smug smile before he could retract it. Mo Xiuyao's handsome face fell. "Li, I was wrong. I won't do such a thing again. Don't be angry with me, okay?" Seeing him like this, Li could only sigh helplessly. Who knows where this personality of Mo Xiuyao's came from? In front of others, he was clearly a domineering overlord, but in private, he was even more childish than Mo Xiaobao. But even so, Li was still clear that this kind of shameless and coquettish behavior was only revealed behind the scenes. It did not mean that this was his true nature. Mo Xiuyao's true nature had unavoidably been tainted with a ruthless side after that world-shaking incident more than a decade ago. No matter what happened in the future, the world would never see the legendary arrogant and upright Heaven's chosen son again. Just like this time, with Mo Xiuyao's intelligence, how could he not think of a better way to resolve this matter? But he did not hesitate to choose the most direct method. Not only was it to intimidate the enemy, it was also to find a way to vent the anger in his heart. Li understood Mo Xiuyao well enough. Most of the time, she was willing to indulge him, but at the same time, she could not help but worry that one day, he would hurt others and himself. "Li, do you hate me?" Seeing that Li had not spoken for a long time, Mo Xiuyao suddenly asked. A trace of sadness and grievance flashed across his half-lowered handsome face, but Li could tell that this time, it was not like before, he was purposely trying to appease her anger in front of her. Mo Xiuyao raised his head and looked at Li with a somewhat gloomy gaze, but more than that, there was unease hidden in the depths of his eyes. "Li cannot hate me. In this world, anyone can hate me, but Li cannot. Don't even think about leaving me, Li." Li understood Mo Xiuyao. Having accompanied Mo Xiuyao for 10 years, he naturally understood Li well enough. Although Li was not sloppy in her actions, she was decisive and resolute, and her temperament was even more resolute than that of a man's. But in essence, Li was not a bloodthirsty and murderous person. If not for the events of the past few years, Mo Xiuyao believed that Li could be an ordinary mistress of a prince's household, a virtuous wife and mother. She was not afraid of killing people, but her heart was calm, without any hostility or murderous intent. Thus, subconsciously, Mo Xiuyao did not want Li to know his true thoughts. Even though he knew that he could not hide this from Li, so he would unconsciously reveal his extremely childish side in front of Li, he hoped to hide the side of himself that he did not want to reveal to others. In reality, even if Mo Xiuyao sat in front of everyone and cried loudly, the world would not believe that Prince Ding was truly as childish as a child. They would only think that he had some ulterior motive. Mo Xiuyao rarely revealed his sinister side in front of Li, so even Li could not help but feel a trace of coldness in his words. But Li knew that Mo Xiuyao would definitely not harm her. She smiled and gently stroked his handsome face that still had a trace of gloom. "What nonsense are you saying? So many things have already passed, and now that I'm about to enjoy life, wouldn't it be foolish for me to leave you?" Seeing that Li's smiling eyes did not have a trace of displeasure or disgust, Mo Xiuyao's expression became much warmer. He raised his hand to hold Yi Li's hand and murmured, "Li, as long as Li is always with me, no matter what Li wants, I will give it to you." Yi Li angrily pinched him, "Just be good and don't make trouble and make me worry. You still dare to say that if anything happens to me, you will throw Xiao Bao to become a beggar. If something happens to you, do you know what I will do?" Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyes to look at her. Yi Li smiled and said, "If something happens to you, I will take all of the Prince Ding Mansion's assets and remarry. At that time, Xiao Bao will definitely not become a beggar. You understand?" Mo Xiaoyao's expression changed. He did not care that Yi Li was still on the bed with him. He leaned over and pressed her down on the bed. "You're not allowed. Even if I die, you're not allowed to marry anyone else. Otherwise, I will kill everyone." Yi Li raised her eyebrows. "Who do you want to kill when you're already dead?" Mo Xiaoyao was stunned for a long time, and the expression in his eyes kept changing. He stared at Yi Li for a long time before finally calming down. He leaned against her neck and said in a muffled voice, "I won't die. If anyone is going to die, it will be them. Me and Li Li will grow old together." Seeing a certain someone's gloomy expression, Yi Li could not help but laugh softly. She raised a hand to gently stroke his silver hair and said with a smile, "Isn't Prince's hair already white?" Mo Xiaoyao raised his head and looked at her beautiful smiling face, saying, "I have to wait for Li Li's hair to also turn white before we can grow old together." "Li Li, you're not angry anymore, right?" Yi Li sighed softly, "You have to keep your word. If there's a next time, I won't just be angry. Do you know how scared I was when I heard Helian Peng say that you barged into the northern tribes' camp alone?" Yi Li was not trying to scare Mo Xiaoyao. When she heard Helian Peng's words, she was really scared out of her wits. Although she knew that Mo Xiaoyao was fine, but if Mo Xiaoyao could barge into the northern tribe's camp because of her being intercepted by Helian Peng, he could possibly do something even more dangerous tomorrow. Unless Yi Li did nothing and stayed by Mo Xiaoyao's side. But they both knew that this was impossible. At least, it was impossible now. Chapter 878. I won't do it again. I definitely won't let Miss Li worry anymore. Wait until I get rid of those hateful people, then we'll go sightseeing and won't care about these things anymore. At that time, wherever Miss Li wants to go, I'll go with her. Mo Xiaoyao hurriedly promised, while silently plotting in his heart. So it was Helian Peng who revealed his secret. Very good, very good. The extremely vengeful Prince Ding heavily marked Helian Peng's name in his heart. Although these years had been neither fast nor slow, Mo Xiaoyao's conviction to get rid of certain people was extremely firm. Yi Li didn't care about him. Compared to those unrelated people, the most important thing was that the man in front of her was safe. "Okay, I'll wait for you." Mo Xiaoyao secretly let out a sigh of relief. Miss Li rarely got angry, but once she got angry, she was very hard to appease. Women like jewelry, gifts, and sweet words were all useless to her. However, seeing Yi Li so worried about him, Mo Xiaoyao's heart was extremely happy. He intimately rubbed his nose against Yi Li's slender neck, and left a soft kiss on her lips. "Miss Li, it's so good to have you by my side. Don't leave me." If he didn't meet her in his life, Mo Xiaoyao couldn't imagine what his life would be like. There would be a day when he wouldn't be able to endure the hatred and viciousness in his heart. He wouldn't hesitate to use the fastest speed to destroy the Dechu state, destroy the entire world, and even destroy the Mahist army and the Prince Ding mansion. It was because he had Yi Li that he wanted to be with Miss Li forever. He wanted to see Miss Li live a happy life by his side. Later on, he had Mo Xiaobao. Although that little bastard was mischievous and always went against him, making people wish he was never born. However, he still wanted to see him grow up safely and then harm others. He didn't want Mo Xiaobao to be like him in the past, hiding in the dark and silently using hatred to nourish the viciousness in his heart. It was precisely because of these that he was able to slow down his pace step by step to calculate and balance, slowly strengthening the power of Prince Ding's residence, allowing himself to be invincible in this chaotic world before going to eliminate those people that he hated bitterly. He didn't want to die together with them from the start. Mo Xiuyao's soft muttering contained a deep infatuation that made Yili unable to help being moved. In her previous life, this life, 2 lives, 2 lives, 2 lives, when someone's is as deeply as Mo Xiuyao. Not because of her family, nor was it because of her ability, but because of her as a person's yi est. As for herself, when have t. Even if she knew that the man in front of her was never as harmless as he appeared to be in front of her, and even if his heart contained endless hatred and viciousness. If it was in the past, she would have long treated him as a future criminal with antisocial tendencies and carefully guarded against him. But now, she was only worried that he would hurt himself because of this. Idiot, other than by your side, where else can I go? Supporting his handsome face, Yili raised her head and slowly kissed those slightly cold thin lips. Xiuyao, I love you. Do you understand? In my heart, you are the most important. No matter what you are the person I love. Mo Xiuyao was stunned. He was indescribably ecstatic by these heavenly words that fell from the sky. He held the back of Yi Li's head and took the initiative to deepen the kiss. Li, I love you. Mo Xiuyao will only love you in this lifetime. In the large tent, a husband and wife who had been married for 10 years, a pair of lovers tightly hugged each other, deeply moved, reporting to Prince Wang Fei. Feng Zhiyao requests an audience. Outside the large tent, Feng Zhiyao's voice was neither loud nor soft, but it happened to interrupt the two of them. Mo Xiuyao's face instantly darkened. He wanted to throw Feng Zhiyao tens of thousands of miles away. Seeing him like this, Yili couldn't help but smile. She pushed Mo Xiuyao in and stood to tidy her clothes. Mo Xiuyao finally let Feng Zhiyao in with a dark face. Stepping into the large tent, Feng Zhiyao felt a wave of cold resentment hit him in the face. When he raised his head to look at Mo Xiuyao who was staring at him, he felt confused. Was the prince in a bad mood because he was scolded by Wang Fei? But, after being scolded by his wife, he vented his anger on his subordinate. Was this really what a gentleman would do? But young Master Feng San clearly overestimated Prince Ding's character. Even if he vented his anger on him, His Highness Prince Ding wouldn't feel the slightest bit of guilt. Moreover, someone had interrupted his good deed. Mo Xiuyao stared darkly at Feng Zhiyao. Feng San, what is it? It had better be something. If Feng Zhiyao dared to say that he was here to drink and chat with him, he should prepare to go back and pack his things and hide in the western regions for the rest of his life. Feng Zhiyao raised an eyebrow. He really did have something important to say. I just received news that Helian Zhen has secretly left the northern militant camp and gone south. Mo Xiuyao raised an eyebrow. Go south? What is Helian Zhen going south for? Helian Zhen had never been to Jiangnan in his life. Wouldn't he get lost? Feng Zhiyao rolled his eyes in annoyance. Did a certain someone's brain start to malfunction as soon as Wang Fei returned? We are at war, and the northern militant people are still retreating. Helian Zhen is not staying in the camp and is going south. Prince, do you think he is traveling? Mo Xiuyao finally pulled himself back from his earlier joy and hatred towards Feng Zhiyao. He said lightly, he wants to ally with Lei Zhenting to deal with the Prince Ding mansion. Congratulations Prince, so your brain is still intact. Feng Zhiyao mocked in annoyance. Mo Xiuyao stared at him and suddenly revealed a sinister smile. Feng San, I noticed that you have been very dissatisfied with I recently. Feng Zhiyao couldn't help but tremble. Only now did he remember that the person in front of him had never been a magnanimous person who did not hold grudges. He was indeed very dissatisfied with Mo Xiuyao, but there was no need to let him know and create more dissatisfaction in the future. Most importantly, if Mo Xiuyao really wanted to punish someone, he would not be able to handle it. Mo Jingli, who had been unlucky since he was young and had a twisted personality, was Yin Jian. How could that be? Prince's virtues match the heavens and earth, and his might is awe-inspiring. I can't wait to admire you. Feng Zhiyao smiled apologetically. Hypocrite. Mo Xiuyao snorted softly. Feng Zhiyao looked speechlessly at the sky. You can be happy all the time. Being hypocritical once in a while was nothing. What are you talking about? Yi Li came out from inside and looked curiously at the two people with different expressions. Feng Zhiyao looked at the Wang Fei who had come out, and then looked at the gloomy and unhappy Mo Xiuyao. He rubbed his nose and suddenly felt that he understood. Wang Fei, Helian Zhen is secretly heading south. This subordinate is asking the prince whether to send people to intercept him. Feng Zhiyao said seriously. Hearing this, Yi Li looked at Mo Xiuyao. Mo Xiuyao said lazily, why stop him? Even if we stop Helian Zhen, there will be others. Even if there isn't, we will still have to fight Enchanting sooner or later. Feng Zhiyao looked at Mo Xiuyao with some difficulty and said, even if we have to fight Enchanting sooner or later, to fight two at the same time now, isn't it a bit? Fighting one at the front and one at the back was definitely easier than fighting two powerful countries at the same time. Mo Xiuyao looked at him with a smile and shook a finger. He smiled and said, it's not two, it's three. Do you think Mo Jingli is a pushover? Hearing Mo Xiuyao's words, Feng Zhiyao couldn't help but change his expression. The Mahist army might be able to win against the northern tribes alone, but with Enchanting, it would be difficult. If there was also Mo Jingli, no matter how stupid Mo Jingli was, he still had millions of soldiers. Even if the three of them added together were millions of pigs, it would be enough to trample the Mahist army to death. Prince, Mo Xiuyao waved his hand and smiled. Don't worry, it's been so many years. I still can't beat them. I'm just afraid that you will play us to death. Feng Zhiyao cursed in his heart as he glanced at Yi Li. Yi Li lowered her head and pondered, but her mind didn't stop calculating the current situation. If we end this quickly, will we be able to finish off the northern tribes first? Mo Xiuyao shook his head and smiled. Since Helian Zhen has left, Yelu Yi will definitely not come out in the future. It's impossible to end this quickly. Yelu Yi wasn't a brute who would rush out and fight to the death. If he wanted to hide in his shell and not come out, there was no way to do so in a short period of time. It's not just Genom of Gojoseon and Mo Jingli. I'm afraid that Yelu Yi has already sent people to the royal house of the northern tribes to ask for help. Feng Zhiyao's face darkened. Why don't you just tell me how many soldiers we have to face? I want to know what else I have to tell you. Mo Xiuyao hugged Yi Li and laughed. Don't worry so much. It's hard to say if the reinforcements from the royal house of the northern tribes will come. Yi Li raised her eyebrows. Yelu Hong. Mo Xiuyao nodded. That's right. Even if Yelu Hong wants to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight, he still has to worry about whether Yelu Yi will send all the soldiers of the northern tribes into the bottomless pit that is the Central Plains. Ever since the northern tribes attacked the Dechu state 2 years ago, Yelu Yi had mobilized no less than 1.5 million soldiers from the northern tribes. Now, Yelu Yi only had less than 700,000 soldiers. A total of 700,000 to 800,000 soldiers were sent into the Central Plains. In reality, the benefits that the royal house of the northern tribes received were very limited. Feng Zhiyao finally relaxed a little. He nodded and said, that's good. But, since the prince doesn't plan to stop Helian Zhen, shouldn't we make some preparations? Not to mention that the Mahist army had less than 1 million soldiers under their command to deal with the allied forces of the three countries. If that was the case, Feng Zhiyao felt that he should really go and die first. Mo Xiuyao pondered for a moment, then asked, Li, how many soldiers can we recruit now? Yi Li calculated for a moment, then said, it will take at least 2 months. We should be able to recruit 1 million soldiers. After that, we can send another 500,000 to 600,000 soldiers to the battlefield. Any more and I'm afraid that it will damage the foundation of the Prince Ding mansion. The reason why the Mahist army didn't have many soldiers was because the Prince Ding mansion used a lot of resources to manage the people's lives. In this way, there were advantages and disadvantages. The disadvantage was that they didn't have enough soldiers. The Mahist army valued quality over quantity. The advantage was that the Prince Ding mansion had all kinds of resources under their command. They had a strong ability and potential to sustain the war. Even if they fought for several years, they didn't have to worry about military supplies. It wouldn't even affect the lives of the people under the Prince Ding mansion. However, no matter how good a card was, if there wasn't a chance to play it, it would be a useless card. Therefore, if it really came to a life and death battle, even if it would damage the foundation of the people under the Prince Ding mansion's rule, they could only consider recruiting the people into the army. Mo Xiaoyao thought for a moment, then said, no need. First, transfer out 800,000 soldiers. The rest will be ready at any time. It won't be too late to replenish them after next year's spring plowing. Will this work? Feng Zhiyao was slightly worried. He felt that Mo Xiaoyao's thinking was too optimistic. To not harm the people's lives and to win the war, how could there be such a good thing? Mo Xiaoyao looked at him calmly and said, it has to work even if it doesn't work. Or do you think this war can be finished in 2 or 3 months? Feng Zhiyao rubbed his nose and didn't say anything. It was common for many wars to last 3 to 5 years once they started. The Mahist army had to deal with 3 countries at the same time. If they didn't leave some trump cards, even if they didn't lose on the battlefield, their own rear would be dragged out until the people had no way to make a living. He sighed helplessly and said, I know. Reporting to the prince, Wang Fei, urgent news from Jiangnan. Outside the door, Zhuo Jing's voice had a trace of urgency. Yi Li suddenly had a bad feeling. She glanced at Mo Xiaoyao and hurriedly said, come in and talk. Zhuo Jing hurried in with a letter in his hand. He said, Wei Lin sent a pigeon. Master Qingchen has disappeared. Chapter 879. Wei Lin sent a messenger pigeon saying that young Master Qingchen's whereabouts are unknown. What? Hearing this, not just Yi Li, even Mo Xiaoyao and Feng Zhiyao were greatly shocked. Yi Li's face paled as she stood up abruptly, almost falling to the ground. Mo Xiaoyao hurriedly helped her to sit down, looking at Zhuo Jing and saying, speak clearly. Zhuo Jing hurriedly presented Wei Lin's letter as he said, after young Master Qingchen settled matters at Infinite Boundless Mountain, he brought Wei Lin's group north, preparing to return to Glass City. However, they were ambushed along the way. More than half of his guards were killed, and Wei Lin was also heavily injured. Young Master Qingchen's whereabouts are unknown. Yi Li silently read through the news sent by Wei Lin. While there were only a few words, Yi Li understood the battle prowess of Wei Lin and Qi Lin. To be able to heavily injure Wei Lin, kill more than half of the dozens of Qi Lin, and kidnap Su Qingchen, it was enough to prove that the other party was definitely not simple, and had clearly been planning this for a long time. This time, it was different from Su Qingchen's disappearance in Nanzhao a few years ago. At that time, Su Qingchen's capture was more or less within his calculations. Other than outsiders who did not know the truth, there were actually not many who were truly worried. However, this time, the other party was able to snatch Su Qingchen from the hands of the Prince Ding Mansion's most elite, Qi Lin. They could not help but worry about Su Qingchen's safety. Mo Xiaoyao supported Yi Li, saying softly, don't worry. If the other party wanted Brother Qingchen's life, they could have assassinated him on the spot. They would not have spent so much effort to take him away. Since they have already taken him away, they would naturally not harm him so easily. Yi Li closed her eyes, forcing herself to calm down. They were already too used to young Master Qingchen's unparalleled intelligence, his intellect like that of a celestial. However, they had forgotten that no matter how formidable Su Qingchen was, he was still just a scholar who did not have the strength to truss a chicken. His intelligence was built on the premise that his personal safety was not threatened. If a random young man who knew martial arts and was unreasonable came, young Master Qing Chen would not be able to do anything. Big brother. Xiaoyao. Thinking that Su Qingchen might be in danger, Yili couldn't help but feel cold all over. Young Master Qingchen, the most outstanding man in recent generations of the Su family. If something happened to him, Yili could almost imagine what would happen to the entire Su family. After calming herself down, Yili held Mo Xiaoyao's hand as if she wanted to draw some strength from it. Don't tell uncle and grandfather about this for now. Mo Xiaoyao wasn't in the mood to be jealous, and nodded, I know, Mr. Li, don't worry. Brother Qingchen is extremely intelligent. He won't get into trouble so easily. Feng Zhiyao glanced at Yili, who was on the verge of breaking down, and quietly left with Zhu Jing. In the large tent, Mo Xiaoyao held Yili in his arms and let her lean against his chest. Mo Xiaoyao's heart ached when he felt the slight wetness on his chest. He gently stroked her black hair and comforted her in a soft voice, Mr. Li, don't worry. I'll immediately send someone to find him. Nothing will happen. Yili said in a low voice, Big Brother's ability is extraordinary. If it wasn't for me, the Su family and Big Brother wouldn't have. Mo Xiaoyao held her tightly and said, It's not Mr. Li's fault. It's all because of me. I've implicated Mr. Li and Brother Qingchen. Mr. Li, don't blame yourself. It's my fault, but even if Mr. Li thinks I'm bad, you can't leave me. I won't let go. Looking at Yili's slightly red eyes, Mo Xiaoyao said in a low voice. I won't leave you. Yili tightly grasped his clothes and said resolutely, As long as I'm alive, I won't leave you. It's just that I'm very scared. If something really happens to Big Brother. We still don't know what happened. We're just scaring ourselves. Mo Xiaoyao said with a faint smile, Mr. Li, don't you believe in your Big Brother's abilities? Do you think something will happen to him? Right now, we should think about what to do. Yili quickly calmed down. Whether or not something happened, finding Su Qingchen was the most important thing. Otherwise, what was the use of crying her heart out here? After calming down, Yili asked, Who do you think wants to capture Big Brother? Su Qingchen thought for a moment and said, In the south, there are only 3 parties that can kidnap someone from Wei Lin's hands, Enchanting, the Emperor of Xiling, and Mo Jingli. However, the Emperor of Xiling doesn't have the guts, and there's no need for him to do so. Enchanting. Brother Su is still in his territory, so the first person we suspect is him. If he really wants to kidnap someone, he might as well just do it. Either way, we'll have a falling out, so there's no need for him to do such a sneaky thing. Then it's Mo Jingli. Yili's eyes flashed with a cold light. Why does he want to capture Big Brother? To threaten the Prince Ding mansion. Mo Xiaoyao was also a bit confused. Mo Jingli was separated from them by Enchanting. Even if he captured Su Qingchen, what could he exchange it for with the Prince Ding mansion? He shook his head and said, Mo Jingli's way of thinking is hard to understand sometimes. Moreover, this is only our guess. I'm sure news will come from the south soon. Li, you don't need to worry. Yili nodded uneasily. After a moment of silence, Yili said, If there's still no news from Big Brother, I want to go to Jiangnan personally. Mo Xiaoyao was stunned and didn't speak for a while. After a long time, just as Yili thought he was going to object, she heard Mo Xiaoyao sigh softly and say, I can't go with you. Li, you must be careful. It's best if you can come back before the northern tribes and Western Hill form an alliance, otherwise you will be in danger. Yili nodded and said in a low voice, Don't worry, I will come back as soon as possible. Just as Mo Xiaoyao said, the next morning, Wei Lin sent someone to deliver a secret letter from the south, explaining in detail what had happened. It turned out that Wei Lin was worried that something would happen to the messenger pigeon, so he sent someone to deliver the letter on a fast horse at the same time he sent the letter. After reading the letter, Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao's brows furrowed even tighter. Young Master Qingqian had disappeared from Lei Zhenting's territory. Such a big matter couldn't have not alarmed Lei Zhenting. The letter said that Lei Zhenting actually had the intention to detain Wei Lin and the others. However, Yi Li wasn't worried about Wei Lin's safety. With their abilities, if they wanted to leave, no one could stop them. Even one of the top 4 experts in the world, Lei Zhenting. Moreover, with Lei Zhenting's status, he wouldn't personally make things difficult for Wei Lin and the others. After reading Wei Lin's letter, Yi Li could only sigh and say, "It looks like I still have to go to Jiangnan personally. I'm only afraid that Big Brother has been taken to the Dechu state by Mo Jingli." Compared to Mo Jingli, Yi Li would actually rather deal with Lei Zhenting. Lei Zhenting was a smart person, and smart people naturally knew what to do and what not to do. On the other hand, people like Mo Jingli would occasionally do things that he knew were impossible, but he always did things that he shouldn't do. Mo Xiaoyao also knew that Su Qingqian's safety was important, so he didn't say much and only said gently, "Be careful." Yi Li nodded and promised in a low voice, "I will return as soon as possible, don't worry." Chapter 880. That night, Yi Li took Qin Feng, Zhuo Jing, Lin Han, Su Qingfeng, and 3 teams of Qi Lin to secretly leave the Mahist army's camp. They avoided the western hill and the northern tribes and took a boat from the east to Jiangnan. Along the way, the Mahist army's shadow guard continuously passed on information about Jiangnan to Yi Li. After knowing that Su Qingqian was indeed not in Lei Zhenting's hands, Yi Li did not plan to provoke Lei Zhenting. She directly took a boat across the river and went ashore. They arrived at the Dechu state under Mo Jingli's control. It was now called Southern Chu. The new Chu capital was not big. It was called Nanjing. However, it was where Mo Jingli's manor was when he was princely. After 2 years of governance, although the area was not big, it was much more prosperous. After all, the Dechu state had a deep foundation. It could not be compared to the Northern Territory, which was like a castle in the sky. Yi Li had disguised herself as a man in white. Now that Yi Li was getting older, she was different from when she disguised herself as a slightly childish young man in white. Although she was still as pretty as before, she looked elegant and refined with an outstanding aura. Compared to the world's #1 young master Qingqian, she was not much worse. Zhuo Jing, Lin Han, and the others were Yi Li's confidants. Naturally, they had seen many people and had also disguised themselves. There were more than a dozen people in the group. It looked like a family of subordinates following a noble young master on a trip. Although the Dechu state was now in a remote corner, it was still a place where people gathered. Their group did not attract much attention when they entered the capital. Wei Lin had arrived in Nanjing long before Yi Li and the others arrived. Although Nanjing was now under the control of Mo Jingli and the Boundless Mountain, it was inevitable that there would be many spies from the Prince Ding mansion. Naturally, they had already prepared a suitable residence. Not far from the Prince Regent's residence, there was a street full of rich and powerful people. The 2 words, Chu residence, were hung on the plaque above the gate. The people nearby only knew that the Chu family was originally a prominent family in Yunzhou. Although it was not as famous as the Su family, which had hundreds of years of history, it was still a scholarly family that had been passed down for several generations. This mansion was one of the other residences of the Chu family in Nanjing. In the past few days, when people saw people coming in and out, they naturally thought that the master of the Chu family had come to stay. Other than the nearby families sending people to deliver gifts, it didn't attract anyone's attention. Yi Li and the others settled down in the Chu mansion. Before they had time to rest, all kinds of information in Nanjing City were sent to the mansion. But what worried Yi Li was that it had nothing to do with Su Qingqian. The only thing that was clear was that a few days ago, there were indeed people who saw a group of people mysteriously crossing the Cloud Mist River with a person. But whether that person was young Master Qingchen or not, and where those people went, no one knew. Looking at Yi Li's frowning appearance, Su Qingfeng comforted her. Big brother is lucky, it won't be so easy for something to happen. Li, don't worry too much. In fact, when something happened to Su Qingchen, how could Su Qingfeng not be worried as the younger brother? However, seeing how worried Yi Li was, he had no choice but to comfort her. He was also very guilty. As the elder brother, he should have shouldered such a thing. But he also understood that he was still somewhat lacking compared to Yi Li. He also couldn't bear to see Yi Li suffer so much and care about Su Qingchen's situation. Yi Li helplessly shook her head and said, if it wasn't for us, if it wasn't for the Prince Ding mansion, how could Big Brother have encountered such a thing? Su Qingfeng nonchalantly shook his head and said, the weather is unpredictable, and people are uncertain. Big Brother's matter may not be because of the Prince Ding mansion. Maybe someone who coveted Big Brother's beauty kidnapped him to be the husband of the fort. Su Qingchen said this to make Yi Li laugh, but it made Yi Li involuntarily think of when Su Qingchen was kidnapped by Shu Manlin in Nanzhao. She couldn't help but smile and helplessly shake her head. While smiling, Yi Li's heart suddenly moved, and she frowned slightly. Su Qingfeng saw her strange expression and hurriedly asked, what's wrong? What did you think of? Yi Li frowned and said in a low voice, get someone to investigate what Dongfang Yu was doing a few days ago. Although Su Qingfeng had only seen Dongfang Yu once at Mr. Qingyun's banquet, he had long heard of this woman who dared to pester his big brother like this. He frowned and said, you suspect that it was Dongfang Yu who did it. But, she is Mo Jingli's princess consort. How could Mo Jingli allow her to? She is also the young master of the infinite boundless mountain. Although the infinite boundless mountain's power in the western hill and the north is almost completely destroyed, its power in Jiangnan is not. Moreover, with close to 100 years of operation, its foundation is not weak. I'm afraid that even if she wanted to do something, Mo Jingli may not know. Yi Li said slowly. Originally, Yi Li did not suspect Dongfang Yu. Dongfang Yu's personality did not seem like someone who would do such a thing. But she neglected the fact that Dongfang Yu was a woman. After experiencing Su Qingchen's rejection and being forced to marry Mo Jingli, it was hard to say whether Dongfang Yu's personality would change. And Dongfang Yu herself was a disciple of the infinite boundless mountain's Fang Hui. Even Fang Hui had personally admitted that Dongfang Yu's intelligence was above hers. Once Dongfang Yu's personality changed, and she was no longer as ignorant of the ways of the world as before, she would become someone even more terrifying than Fang Hui. Speaking of Dongfang Yu, Wei Lin frowned and said, Dongfang Yu betrayed Dongfang Hui. Hearing this, everyone immediately turned their gazes to Wei Lin. Wei Lin had followed Su Qingchen to the south this time, and had always been by her side. The matter of dealing with the infinite boundless mountain this time was also handled by Su Qingchen. Yi Li and the others did not know the details. Hearing Wei Lin's words, they were shocked. Dongfang Hui had nurtured and taught Dongfang Yu. Even Dongfang Hui herself probably did not think that Dongfang Yu would betray her. Wei Lin said, after the infinite boundless mountain was broken through, Dongfang Hui originally had a chance to escape back to Jiangnan. But we knew beforehand that the infinite boundless mountain had a few reinforcements at the Cloud Water River, and just happened to capture Dongfang Hui. Although the person who sent the letter to us did not appear, young Master Qingchen said that there was an 80% chance that it was Dongfang Yu. I really did not think that Lady Dongfang would actually die at the hands of her most beloved disciple. After hearing Wei Lin's explanation, Yi Li could not help but sigh. Other than forcing Dongfang Yu to marry Su Qingchen, Yi Li did not have much ill feelings towards Dongfang Hui. After all, a woman who could single-handedly support the entire infinite boundless mountain was definitely outstanding in some ways. Compared to dying at the hands of her most trusted and beloved disciple, Dongfang Hui would probably rather die at the hands of Su Qingchen and Lei Tingfeng. This means that Dongfang Yu is extremely likely to have already grasped control of the remaining powers of the infinite boundless mountain. Then, the possibility of Big Brother being in her hands is also much greater. Yi Li said in a low voice. Qin Feng asked rather suspiciously, with Dongfang Yu's appearance, would she be able to do such a thing? In Qin Feng's eyes, Dongfang Yu was completely a love-struck fool. Yi Li shook her head, saying, Dongfang Yu's martial arts are above yours and mine. It is said that her medical skills are also not bad, and she is even proficient in the 4 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, strategy and military strategy. How can a woman who can learn so much be an idiot? It depends on whether she is enlightened or not. When she is not enlightened, she is just an idiot in the eyes of others. Once she understands everything, she is the most terrifying person. Dongfang Hui would probably never understand why Dongfang Yu wanted to kill her. Chapter 881. Sighing faintly, Yi Li said to Qin Feng, send a message to Yaoji, I have something to ask her. Qin Feng was stunned and nodded, as you command. In Nanjing City, in the most upscale tea house, Zhaixinglu. A beautiful young woman slowly walked in with an 8 or 9-year-old child, but everyone in the hall was attracted to them. This young woman was naturally Yaoji, the concubine of Marquis Muyang's mansion, and the young master of Marquis Muyang's mansion. Since the family moved to the south, Marquis Muyang was somewhat disheartened, so he passed the title of Marquis Muyang to his son, Muyang. He only played with his grandson at home every day, living a carefree life. Mu Yang was also a very capable and ambitious person. Although Mo Jingqi was gone, Marquis Muyang's mansion gradually became closer to Mo Jingli. In the past 2 years, Marquis Muyang's mansion became more and more prosperous. And the news that the beautiful concubine of Marquis Muyang's mansion was almost on the same level as the official wife naturally spread in Nanjing City. Yaoji became the object of all the official wives' hatred and the concubine's imitation. As soon as Yaoji came in, the shopkeeper hurried to greet her politely, Madam Mu, young master, please come upstairs. Yaoji smiled sweetly, thank you, do you still have my room? The shopkeeper smiled fawningly, it's our blessing that Madam Mu likes the refreshments in this small building. Of course, I will always keep the room that Madam likes. Everyone in Nanjing City knew that although Marquis Muyang had several wives and concubines, he only doted on this concubine. This Madame Yaoji was originally a dancer in Chu Capital's Qingqing Lane, known as the #1 dancer in Chu Capital. Her enchanting beauty was naturally not comparable to ordinary people. And because Marquis Muyang doted on her, Madame Yaoji was very generous. Usually, even if she didn't come, she would ask someone to buy some refreshments every day. Zhaixinglu was naturally willing to keep a room for her to show preferential treatment. Yaoji said with a smile, thank you, and went upstairs with the child beside her. All that was left was a fragrant silhouette and a clear and melodious laughter. When her figure disappeared upstairs, the people downstairs couldn't help but sigh in relief and talk among themselves. This Madame Yaoji is indeed worthy of being the #1 dancer in the past. Although she is not young, her beauty is something that even Princess Consort Li cannot compare to. Currently, one of the 2 princess consorts of Prince Li, Rong Fei Yiying, was once known as the #1 beauty in the capital. But now, the only thing that made people remember her was that she was Princess Ding's younger sister. How could she be compared to Yaoji, who was so gorgeous? Marquis Muyang really has good luck with women, no wonder he dotes on Madame Yaoji so much. It was just a pity that Madame Muyang was originally a young lady from a prestigious family, a delicate beauty. Unfortunately, he could only be overshadowed by Yaoji, who was radiant in all directions. Yaoji held Mu Lai's hand as they went upstairs. They entered the room that she usually sat in. Someone was already waiting for her inside. Seeing Yi Li sitting in the side room drinking tea, Yaoji couldn't help but smile and say, where did this handsome young master come from? Yi Li looked at her with a smile and said, Yaoji, it's been a long time since we last met. Mu Lai, come and sit down. Mu Lai still looked less than 10 years old, but he was already a little adult. He looked at Yi Li curiously and replied respectfully, yes, Thank you, princess. Yili shook her head and looked at Yaoji, saying, how can you teach such a serious child with such a temperament? Yaoji said helplessly, how can I teach him? He is the one who teaches me. Yaoji also sat down. When she saw Qin Feng sitting not far behind Yili, she was slightly stunned and turned her eyes away as if she didn't care. Yaoji also knew that the war in the north was now rising. Yili came all the way to Jiangnan for a matter of great importance. She didn't talk nonsense and told Yili all the things that happened in Nanjing these days. After listening, Yili frowned and said, you didn't have any news of my eldest brother in Nanjing? Yaoji smiled helplessly and said, after hearing the news of young Master Qingqian's disappearance, I have been carefully paying attention to the movements inside and outside the Chu capital, but there was no news of young Master Qingqian. Yaoji can guarantee that no matter whether young Master Qingqian was kidnapped by the people of Nanjing, at least young Master Qingqian is definitely not in Nanjing at this time. Seeing Yili frown, Yaoji couldn't help but frown slightly. Speaking of which, this matter was indeed somewhat bizarre. Young Master Qingqian was not some random passerby like Brother Cat. No matter where he was very eye-catching. And with young Master Qingqian's intelligence, as long as he was still alive, he would leave some clues for them. But these days, the people of the Prince Ding mansion almost searched the whole Jiangnan, but there was no news of young Master Qingqian. All of a sudden, Yaoji remembered something. She said in a low voice, by the way, before young Master Qingqian disappeared, I sent him a secret letter. Hearing this, everyone hurriedly raised their heads and looked over. Yaoji said, the secret letter was sent from the Prince Regent's mansion. Because the princess and the prince are at the border, now the affairs of Jiangnan have been transferred to young Master Qingqian. So the secret letter was sent directly to young Master Qingqian. At that time, it was the second day after Dong Fanghui died. After Dong Fanghui was killed, the news came from the Prince Li's mansion. Yili said in a low voice. The timing was so coincidental. The news from Yi Ying was naturally related to Dong Fangyu. Wei Lin, do you know what was written in the secret letter? Wei Lin shook his head in frustration and said, at that time, I was not with young Master Qingqian. Then young Master Qingqian asked me to go there, saying that he had something to tell me. But when I just arrived at the door, the assassin arrived. Then, the secret letter was either taken away by the assassin or destroyed by young Master Qingqian. Qin Feng said, now there is no bad news about Princess Li from the Prince Regent's mansion, so the secret letter should not be disclosed. Yili sighed helplessly and said, then we can only find a breakthrough from the Prince Li's mansion. Yaoji, is there any news about Imo Jingli's son? Yaoji nodded and whispered a few words in Yili's ear with a smile. Yili raised her eyebrows in surprise and said, are you sure? Absolutely. Yaoji smiled and said, it was confirmed 2 months ago. But this news is too important, so I was worried that something might go wrong. I specially sent someone to personally send it back to Glass City. But I did not expect young Master Qingqian and the princess consort to come to Jiangnan one after another. Yili sighed and said, it's not over yet. Mo Jingli has already gotten the antidote. In the future, this news will be worthless. Yaoji covered her mouth and smiled, that may not be so. Mo Jingli was drugged by Mo Jingqi. Even if there is an antidote, it will take some time for it to take effect. But that Prince Li is impatient. The moment he returned to Jiangnan, he took in 4 or 5 daughters of court officials. It's a pity that there has been no news. I heard that Prince Li suspects that Prince used fake medicine to deceive him and is suppressing his anger. Moreover, even if it doesn't work on the father, the child is always useful to the mother. Speaking of this, Yaoji could not help but sigh softly and sympathize with Yi Ying. As a mother, she was strong. If not for her child, why would she give up her peaceful life in Glass City and stay in Marquis Muyang's mansion for so many years? Chapter 882. Prince Ding had long hated the Muyang Marquis mansion, but her son was Mu Yang's son. If she wanted her son to live a peaceful life, she could only be loyal to the Prince Ding mansion. What's more, Princess Ding saved her and her child's life, and the Muyang Marquis mansion, even if Mu Yang knew what those people did to her and her child, he would never do anything for them. He just pampered her in his own way. Mu Yang thought he loved her very much, or maybe he really loved her. But his love was no longer what she and her child needed. As early as when she returned to the Muyang Marquis mansion with Mu Lai, she was no longer the Yaoji who loved and hated Mu Yang. She was just a spy planted by the Prince Ding mansion in the Muyang Marquis mansion and the Dechu state. From then on, there was no love or hate, only a standpoint. Yili nodded, I will go and see Yiying later. Yaoji nodded, I will try to arrange it. If Princess has nothing else, we will go back first. Yili thought for a while, after finding Big Brother, you and Mu Lai can go back to Glass City. Hearing this, Yaoji couldn't help but be startled. She had been in the Muyang Marquis mansion for more than 2 years, and had already become a very important nail of the Prince Ding mansion in Nanjing. Although it couldn't be said that she was irreplaceable, if she suddenly disappeared, it would not be easy to deal with. Princess, this is... Yili looked up at her and smiled faintly, you have done what you should do, there is no need to stay in Jiangnan and waste your time. Yaoji was silent for a moment, then nodded, Yaoji understands. Thank you, Princess. Yaoji left with Mu Lai. Qin Feng frowned, looked at Yili with some worry, Princess, is it not good to say this to her now? Yili looked at him with a smile, you don't believe her? Qin Feng's face stiffened, and after a while, he sighed, maybe. In fact, Qin Feng himself didn't quite understand what was going on between him and Yaoji. He had never forgotten the haggard and thin woman who came back, but he couldn't be sure what Yaoji thought of him. If Yaoji had feelings for him, why did she ask the prince and princess to leave Glass City and return to the Muyang Marquis mansion without hesitation? And he, if he really loved Yaoji, why couldn't trust her completely? But she was worried that Yaoji would betray her at the first moment when the princess tested her. Looking at Qin's face, Yi smiled, don't think too much. It's only natural that you're worried. There is no trust. Yaoji is Yaoji, Aoji, Yaoji, Aoji, Aoji. It was not that Yili did not believe in Yaoji's loyalty, but a woman's life was the easiest to be swayed by two people. One was her lover, and the other was her children. Even Yili couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't do something she shouldn't do for Mo Xiaoyao and her 3 children. It was better to give Yaoji a buffer now than to ask her to accept it all of a sudden. Even if there was something wrong with Yaoji, they could make up for it at any time. As early as the moment Yili came to Nanjing, the end of the Muyang Marquis mansion had been destined. Mo Xiaoyao hated and detested many people. The former Marquis Muyang was undoubtedly one of them. Since he was already here, Yili didn't mind ending it for him first. What's more, once Mo Jingli agreed to ally with the Beirong of Xiling, the Muyang Marquis mansion would be the enemy of the Prince Ding mansion, so it was okay to get rid of them first. Qin Feng was silent for a long time, and then looked at Yili, Princess, please let me handle the affairs of the Muyang Marquis mansion. Yili was a little hesitant, have you thought it through? I thought it would be more appropriate to let Zhuo Jing and Lin Han handle it. Qin Feng smiled, thank you, Princess. I won't let you down. Yili sighed softly, you should know. If the Muyang Marquis mansion was destroyed by Qin Feng, Yaoji and him would be in danger in the future. Even if Yaoji didn't love Muyang, he was still the father of her son. I understand. Qin Feng smiled faintly, but his tone was as firm as a rock. In that case, let Lin Han go with you. If there's anything inconvenient, let Lin Han do it. Yili said. Lin Han nodded, yes, Princess. Of course, Lin Han understood what Princess meant. If Qin Feng needed to kill someone in the Muyang Marquis mansion, Lin Han could do it for him. Thank you, Princess. In the Muyang Marquis mansion, Yaoji took Mu Lai to her courtyard with a calm expression. But the way was suddenly blocked by someone in front of her. Yaoji looked up at the several women standing in front of her, and her face darkened slightly. The former young madam, now Marquis Muyang's wife, looked at the woman in front of her who was still enchanting even though she was over 30 years old. Her eyes were full of jealousy and unwillingness. She shrieked, "Where did you go, vice madam?" Yaoji was in a bad mood. She raised her eyebrows and said lightly, "What's your business?" Marquis Muyang's face stiffened. Her delicate face suddenly became a little ferocious. She gritted her teeth and said, "Yaoji, you're too arrogant. Don't forget, I'm Marquis Muyang's wife." Yaoji glanced at her and said indifferently, "So what? You can keep the position of Marquis Muyang's wife. No one will take it from you. If you want, you can even keep the position of vice madam." "You." Marquis Muyang's wife gnashed her teeth. She couldn't wait to tear the woman in front of her apart. She was a noble lady. How could she lose to a woman from the musical house? Over the years, she was not only neglected by Muyang, but also laughed at by the noble women outside. At this time, Marquis Muyang's wife realized how much Yaoji had suffered because of her. She even almost lost her life. If she hadn't forced Yaoji, Yaoji would have hidden her identity for the rest of her life with her child. How could she become a spy of the Prince Ding mansion and come back to compete with her for favor? Yaoji glanced impatiently at the several charming women behind her. These women were specially chosen by Marquis Muyang's wife for Muyang in the past 2 years to show her virtuousness. Some were also sent by officials. But because of Yaoji's favor, these women could only put away their ambitions and stand behind Marquis Muyang to deal with Yaoji together. Unfortunately, for Yaoji who had experienced countless things, these people were too inexperienced. Even if they joined forces, they still couldn't take advantage of her. Yaoji was in a bad mood now. Naturally, she didn't have time to argue with these women. Looking up at Marquis Muyang's wife, she smiled and said in a low voice, "Madam, there's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time." "What do you want to say?" Marquis Muyang stared at Yaoji warily. Yaoji smiled coldly, "I've always wanted to tell you. In fact, it's useless for you to keep targeting me. Muyang isn't interested in you. Shouldn't you reflect on yourself? As a woman, your husband is so bored that he doesn't even want to look at you. I really feel sorry for you." Chapter 883. With that, Yaoji ignored Marquis Muyang, who instantly turned pale. She waved her sleeves and turned to go back to her courtyard. "Are you in a bad mood?" Mu Lai followed behind her. Although he seemed to be walking slowly, he kept a distance of 2 or 3 steps from Yaoji who was walking quickly. Back in Yaoji's courtyard, Mu Lai asked faintly. Yaoji was startled and shook her head, "Nothing." Mu Lai leaned against the pillar and looked at her quietly. "We'll be able to return to Glass City soon. You'll be able to see your son. Aren't you happy?" After spending a few years together, Mu Lai had developed some feelings for Yaoji. He was an orphan and didn't know his biological mother was Muyang. But every time he saw Yaoji miss her son, he still didn't want Yaoji to regret her mistake for the rest of her life. Yaoji smiled helplessly. Muyang was her son's father. Whether she still loved him or not, this was an unchangeable fact. How could she be happy? Mu Lai looked at her and said, "If you can't accept it, you can tell Princess Consort to leave first. Princess Consort won't make things difficult for you. I can do it alone." Both Yaoji and Mu Lai were smart people. When Yili asked them to go back to Glass City together, Yaoji knew that Princess Consort planned to make a move on Marquis Muyang's residence. In fact, there were many people who could be sent to the Chu capital. Yaoji naturally wasn't a necessary candidate. The reason why Yaoji was chosen was undoubtedly because of Prince Ding's enmity towards Marquis Muyang's residence. Yaoji naturally knew that Marquis Muyang led troops to besiege Yili. As a result, Yili was forced to fall off a cliff by Genom of Gojoseon. Yaoji pulled out a faint smile and looked at Mu Lai. Thank you, I'm fine. Mu Lai frowned, a trace of worry was written on his young face. Yaoji raised her hand and rubbed his little head. You're just a child. Why are you thinking so much? Mu Lai slapped her hand away unhappily. I'm not a child anymore. Forget it, you can do whatever you want. Don't forget that your son is still waiting for you in Glass City. Also, I'm going back to Glass City to go to Qilin. If you cause me to be unable to go back, I'll kill you. Yaoji couldn't help but smile as she watched Mu Lai turn around and leave. When they reached the door, Mu Lai stopped for a moment. He turned back and said, I can see that Governor Qin treats you quite well. Why don't you consider it? At the very least, Governor Qin is much better than that Mu Yang. At the very least, after you left for a few years, Governor Qin didn't fool around with other women. Look at your previous eyesight. Even I feel embarrassed to despise you. After saying that, he waved his hand and swaggered out without caring about Yaoji's change of expression. Sighing faintly, Yaoji reached out her hand and opened the jewelry box in front of the dressing table. She dug out an inconspicuous box hidden in the lowest corner of the room. Opening the box, there was a jasper lotus hairpin inside. She didn't know why she kept this hairpin with her. When she left Glass City for Chu Capital, she had already made the decision to never touch anyone again. Qin Feng was her savior and was Princess Ding's confidant. He was in charge of the most elite Qilin in the Prince Ding mansion. In fact, even Princess Ding's third brother, the third son of the Su family, was his subordinate. Such a person, even if he wasn't famous, he wasn't someone she, who was born in a musical house and had a child, could match up to. If she had a choice, Yaoji would rather have met a man like Qin Feng than Mu Yang. Perhaps all the good men in the world were in the Prince Ding mansion. Or perhaps it was because Prince Ding's deep affection for the princess followed suit. Most of the men in the Prince Ding mansion seemed to be devoted. Even if Mu Yang doted on her so much that everyone in Nanjing knew, the number of concubines in the Marquis Mu Yang's mansion was no less than any other family. Mu Yang was a charming and romantic dream in her best years. When she woke up from the dream, there was only a faint sadness left. But Qin Feng was the beauty she hoped for but didn't dare to touch. While she was lost in thought, a soft sound behind her made Yaoji come back to her senses. She was used to being vigilant in the past few years. When she suddenly turned around and saw the man standing behind her, she couldn't help but be startled. Compared with Mu Yang's fame in Chu Capital, Qin Feng's appearance was also handsome but not ostentatious. The commander of Qilin, who was born in the army, had a completely different temperament from the son of a noble family. If Mu Yang was like a shining sword, Qin Feng was the famous sword hidden in the scabbard. It seemed inconspicuous, but the light when it was unsheathed could shine in all directions. Why are you here? After a while, Yaoji asked. Qin Feng's eyes fell on the jasper hairpin in her hand. His eyes couldn't help but be a little warmer. Naturally, Yaoji also noticed his gaze. She hurriedly put the jade hairpin back into the box. You're here now. Does the princess consort have something to tell me? Feeling a little embarrassed by his gaze, Yaoji quickly changed the topic. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with an almost invisible smile. He nodded and looked at Yaoji calmly. Yes. The matter of the Marquis Mu Yang's mansion, the princess left it to me. Hearing this, Yaoji's hands that were busy cleaning up the table paused. Her face instantly turned pale. Chapter 884. Looking at Yaoji's face, which is as pale as paper, Qin Feng slightly restrained his gaze. He calmly looked at her and asked, Do you have any problem? Yaoji was startled. She forced a smile and said, What problem can I have? Qin Feng said calmly, I heard what you said to Mu Lai just now. Mu Lai is right. If you feel uncomfortable, I will report to the princess and let you leave first. Yaoji quickly shook her head, No need, I'm fine. Qin Feng looked at her seriously, you'd better think carefully. If you can't bear it and ruin the prince and the princess's relationship. Meeting Qin Feng's calm eyes, Yaoji's heart trembled. She closed her eyes and when she opened them again, she was calm. She nodded, I know. My son is still in Glass City. I won't do anything to hurt him. That had better be the case. Qin Feng looked at Yaoji deeply and turned to leave. He quickly disappeared from Marquis Muyang's mansion. Not far from Marquis Muyang's mansion, he saw Lin Han dangling from the eaves like a bat and looking at him. Seeing Qin Feng coming over, Lin Han slid down from the eaves. He looked at Qin Feng and shook his head, why do you have to do this? You'll only make her hate you if you do this. He specially came to Marquis Muyang's mansion. He thought Qin Feng was going to tell Yaoji his feelings or something. Who knew that it was a series of threats and warnings? Did Qin Feng really like Yaoji? Lin Han was a little confused. Qin Feng said calmly, the princess is right. It's better to make it clear now than to lose your life in the future. In the end, you still don't believe her? Lin Han raised his eyebrows and asked. Qin Feng tilted his head and thought, what should I believe? That Yaoji doesn't have the intention to betray Prince Ding Mansion. Now I believe that Yaoji won't betray Prince Ding Mansion. But I don't know if Yaoji still loves Mu Yang. As long as Yaoji still had the slightest feelings for Mu Yang, no one could guarantee what Yaoji would do at that time. Now we just need to ensure that the princess's plan and safety are not messed up. Seeing Qin Feng walk forward without any hesitation, Lin Han shrugged and followed him, asking, should we send someone to watch her? Mu Lai will keep an eye on her. Qin Feng's voice was heard faintly. Lin Han, who was behind them, sighed. Relationships were really too troublesome. Fortunately, he didn't have any trouble in this regard at the moment. Otherwise, he would die of pain like Qin Feng, Yaoji, or young Master Feng San. It would be better to wait for a few more years before finding a suitable girl to marry. In Marquis Muyang's mansion, Yaoji was alone in her room, lost in thought. Today's matter had given her a great shock. Other than the initial panic, Yaoji gradually understood the meaning of Ding Wangfei. At the same time, she couldn't help but admire Princess Ding for being able to think of such trivial things. She never thought of betraying Prince Ding Mansion, just like she never thought of getting back together with Mu Yang. But at the same time, she never thought that one day she would want Mu Yang to die. Perhaps, the princess didn't want Mu Yang to die. But for someone like Mu Yang, there was no difference between destroying Marquis Muyang's mansion and killing him. Princess Ding was very thoughtful, so Yaoji didn't blame her for probing. She even thanked her. If she waited until the last moment to know these things, she really wasn't sure if she could do it. Although it was also difficult and painful now, it gave her enough time to think and make a decision. Although it was painful, it also reduced the possibility of accidents. Yaoji, I heard that you're not feeling well. Mu Yang's voice came from outside the door. Yaoji quickly restrained her expression and turned to look at the man at the door with a calm expression. He was already over 30 years old, but he had more of a mature man's steady aura compared to when he was young. He was no longer the handsome and gentle young master of the capital, nor the helpless Marquis Shitzi who had to compromise in pain between his lover and his parents. Now he was more powerful and domineering. Yaoji stood up and said with a faint smile, nothing, I'm just not in a good mood. Mu Yang looked at her with heartache and an apologetic expression. Did Madam find trouble with you again? I'll tell her later, so she won't bother you anymore. Yaoji smiled slightly, and her lips curved into a mocking smile. She said indifferently, it's been so many years, what's the use of telling her? Yaoji. Mu Yang sighed helplessly and said, are you still angry with me? Lai is already so old, can't we just live peacefully? I'll give you whatever you want, and no one will bully you and your son anymore. Yaoji's smile was a little bitter. After so many years, she was a little numb to such words. Although she returned to the Marquis Muyang's mansion with ulterior motives, she gradually had to rejoice in this ulterior motive. If she was not saved by Qin Feng and directly taken back to the Marquis Muyang's mansion, if the son left in the mansion was not Mu Lai who was trained by the Prince Ding mansion since childhood, but her own son, with Mu Yang's attitude, would she and her son be able to live until now? Mu Yang loved her very much, but he also loved other things. Even if it was for her and their child, he would not be willing to give up anything, not even a little bit. Even if she was no longer in a position to blame him, she still could not help but feel sad for his attitude, for her child. Do you still remember the serious illness that Lai had in the autumn 2 years ago? Yaoji asked faintly. Mu Yang frowned slightly. Yaoji, what's wrong with you? Yaoji ignored him and continued, and last year, he fell off the back of a horse. And this spring, he fell into the lake. Yaoji recounted the various dangers that Mu Lai had encountered in the past few years intermittently. Of course, there were also some things that she had done both openly and secretly. Although Mu Lai wasn't really her son, all that he had suffered was for her child's sake. And what made Yaoji even more disheartened was that Mu Yang had never punished anyone behind the scenes except for killing those servants. Yaoji, what's wrong with you? Isn't Lai all right? Why are you talking about this again today? You know, it's us who are sorry. Before he could finish, Yaoji looked at him coldly and said, it's not us, it's you. Mu Yang, it's you who are sorry to those women. If I left the Marquis Muyang's mansion and never came back, you wouldn't have to be sorry to anyone. It's you who insisted on quarreling with your parents and taking your anger out on your wife. After a long time, you feel that you are sorry to them. But, even if I am sorry to them, my son is not sorry to them. Yaoji. Mu Yang looked at the cold-faced woman in front of him with some surprise. Since he took Yaoji and Mu Lai back to the Marquis's mansion a few years ago, Yaoji's temperament was different from before. He had always thought that Yaoji still blamed him for making her and the child suffer so much, so he had been taking care of her and accommodating her in every way. But it was not until now that he realized that Yaoji was no longer the Yaoji with bright eyes, sweet smiles, and charming enchanting Yaoji in Qingqing Lane. On her originally beautiful face, there was a coldness and decisiveness that was completely unfamiliar to him. Mu Yang suddenly felt a trace of panic. Could it be that he had never really known Yaoji in the past few years? Chapter 885. Yaoji looked at him indifferently. After a long while, she sighed faintly and said, just now, concubine Lu sent a message saying that she seems to be pregnant. You should go and have a look. Mu Yang's expression softened as if he had understood something. Smiling, he hugged Yaoji's thin shoulders and said somewhat awkwardly and complacently, it's my fault. I shouldn't have kept it from you. But you know, concubine Lu's father. Yaoji lowered her eyes and said lightly, I know, there are only 2 other girls in the residence besides Lai. It's a good thing that concubine Lu has a child. He looked at Yaoji to make sure that her expression was normal and she wasn't angry. Only then did he release her and say, then I'll go and have a look first. I'll come over tonight to have dinner with you. Yaoji nodded her head dispiritedly and left. Just as Mu Yang went out, the window beside him moved, and Mu Lai climbed in through the window. Looking at Yaoji, she shook her head and said, I don't understand why you keep thinking about him. For no reason, you've been given the title of a special favorite. How are the women in this mansion any less than other families? If it weren't for our protection, you wouldn't even know how you died. Yaoji looked at him helplessly and said, why don't you open the door? Are you addicted to climbing through the window? You're just a kid, what do you know? There's nothing going on between me and him. It's just that he. Mu Lai rolled his eyes and climbed into a chair to sit down. He said, this young master doesn't like to take the ordinary path. I know what you're thinking. Even if you don't have any feelings for him, he's still the father of my younger brother whom I've never met. If the child grows up and finds out that it was you, his mother, who caused his father's death, you won't be able to explain it to the child, right? can't you just not tell him? There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world, unless he doesn't know about his background for the rest of his life, Yaoji said with some melancholy. Mu Lai said, I've never seen my parents, but they're still living happily. Also, didn't you say that his adoptive parents treated him very well? Yaoji silently glanced at Mu Lai. How could a child who had never been a parent understand the feelings of a mother, no matter how smart he was? Mu Lai waved his hand and said, that's enough. At most, you and Commander Qin can have another child. As for my little brother, I just need to know that he's doing well. It was much better than letting him know his current identity, right? Didn't you say that he is the son of an official now? He was well aware of how awkward Mu Lai's identity had been for the past few years. Firstly, he was the eldest son and the only son of Marquis Muyang's household. If everything went well, he might inherit the title of Marquis Muyang's mansion in the future. But on the other hand, he was the son of a concubine. His birth mother was once a dancer. Moreover, he was an unmarried child. If it wasn't for the fact that the house of Marquis Muyang never had a male heir, he wouldn't even be listed in the genealogy. This caused him to be ostracized by those of the same age as him. Fortunately, he didn't have to stay here and pretend to be the young master of Marquis Muyang's mansion. Otherwise, after a few more years, even his marriage would be awkward. A real big family would not be willing to marry their first wife's daughter to the son of a dancer. A small family or a concubine's daughter would not be worthy of the identity of the heir of Marquis Muyang's household. If Yaoji's youngest son really grew up in Marquis Muyang's mansion, Mu Lai dared to guarantee that he would not be killed by others. If he was not spoiled by Muyang, he would probably have a twisted personality. What nonsense are you talking about? Yaoji glared at him angrily. This child was getting more and more outspoken as he grew up. Mu Lai said with a smile, don't be embarrassed. Commander Qin came to see you just now, right? Yaoji glanced at him indifferently. When Qin Feng was mentioned, Yaoji's expression became even more gloomy. Mu Lai patted her sympathetically and said, actually, you were asking for trouble when you came to Marquis Muyang's mansion. If you married Commander Qin directly, even if our prince hates the Mu family, he would not find trouble with his brother for the sake of Princess Consort and Commander Qin. Yaoji smiled bitterly. How could things be as simple as he thought? If it were Princess Ding, she might not care, but Prince Ding would never let the Mu family off so easily. If Prince Ding wanted to kill Marquis Muyang, he could have done it long ago. The reason why he did not do it was because he wanted to torture Marquis Muyang and destroy the Mu family. How could Prince Ding let go of such a pawn like her? In these few years, although Marquis Muyang's mansion was not destroyed, it was not peaceful. You don't have to worry about me. I know what to do. Yaoji smiled faintly. In this world, no one was more important than her son. Even if she could not be by his side to watch him grow up, she must do her best to let him live a worry-free life. In Prince Li's mansion, Yi Ying walked out of the mansion with two people beside her. But as soon as she walked into the hall, she was stopped. Yi Ying frowned and looked at Dong Fangyu in front of her. She said unhappily, what are you doing? Dong Fangyu stared at Yi Ying from head to toe and asked, where are you going? Yi Ying's pretty face darkened. She said unhappily, what does where I go have to do with you? Dong Fangyu said indifferently, now I have the final say in Prince Li's mansion. No one can go out without my permission. Yi Ying sneered, who do you think you are? You are the princess consort and I am also the princess consort. If I want to go out, what can you do? What's more? I have asked the Imperial Consort Dowager. The Imperial Consort Dowager has agreed. What right do you have to disagree? These days, the direction of Prince Li's mansion had obviously changed. Dong Fangyu, who did not care about anything, suddenly took over many affairs of Prince Li's mansion. She even had the intention of making Consort Xian Zhao a mere figurehead. Consort Xian Zhao did not like Yi Ying. But compared to the overbearing Dong Fangyu, the obedient and harmless Yi Ying was especially cute. So when Ying occasionally asked her for something, consort Xian Zhao would mostly agree. Dongfang Yu sneered disdainfully. I said, I have the final say in Prince Li's mansion. Not to mention consort Xian Zhao, even if the Empress Dowager came personally, it would be useless. It was no wonder that consort Xian Zhao did not like Dongfang Yu. Compared to Yi Ying, Dongfang Yu was much better than Yi Ying except for her bad reputation. But at the same time, Dongfang Yu's temper was not comparable to Yi Ying's. Maybe she had no interest in Mo Jingli, or maybe she did not care about Mo Jingli at all. When Dongfang Yu talked about consort Xian Zhao and the Empress Dowager, there was no respect at all. Consort Xian Zhao had been noble all her life. How could she tolerate the rudeness of the younger generation? I insist on going out. What can you do? Yi Ying said harshly. Dongfang Yu raised her eyebrows. She did not expect Yi Ying, who seemed to have no temper these days, to be so tough. Compared to her third sister, Princess Ding, Yi Li, this Yi Ying was not like a family at all. Dongfang Yu had never cared about her either. Now that she was contradicted by Yi Ying, she was naturally even more unhappy. Yi Ying, for Princess Ding's sake, I will also give you some face. But you'd better not be shameless. Yi Ying was furious. She did not care about Dongfang Yu and turned to walk out of the door. She did not believe that Dongfang Yu would dare to kill her in Prince Li's mansion. Catch her. Dongfang Yu said coldly. Chapter 886. A figure in green flashed past, and two men appeared in front of Yi Ying, blocking her way. Dongfang Yu said proudly, take this woman back to her courtyard. If she still dares to cause trouble, throw her into the dungeon. Yes. The two men replied respectfully. How dare you? Yi Ying was shocked. These two men were obviously not guards of the Li Palace. Seeing the two men coming forward to grab her, Yi Ying screamed, Dongfang Yu. You're too much. Your prince will not let you off. Dongfang Yu snorted disdainfully, stay at home obediently. If you dare to go out, I'll break your legs. Do you think this is Li's city and you still have that Ding Wang Fei Jijie backing you up? How dare you? Prince. Prince, save me. Yi Ying struggled and screamed. What's going on? Mo Jingli came in from outside, looking at the farce in front of him with an unfriendly expression. Seeing Mo Jingli come in, Yi Ying quickly broke free from the people holding her and hid behind Mo Jingli. Prince. Prince, save me. Dongfang Yu wants to break my legs. Mo Jingli looked at Dongfang Yu unhappily and frowned. What are you doing now? Don't go overboard. Dongfang Yu frowned as well. How am I going overboard? I just asked someone to send her back to her room. What happened in the Li Palace these days could not be hidden from Mo Jingli. Mo Jingli looked at Yi Ying and asked, what's going on? Yi Ying didn't expect that Mo Jingli would ask her. She hurriedly seized the opportunity and said, I told the old concubine that I wanted to go out for a walk. Who knows why she went crazy and stopped me in the hall. She even threatened to throw me into the dungeon and break my legs if I went out again. Prince, how come I didn't know? I, the Li princess consort, can't even go out. If Prince is really tired of Ing, why don't you just divorce me? Why don't you just divorce me? Why do I have to suffer today's humiliation? After such a long time, Yi Ying finally made some progress. He was very proficient in using the tactic of retreating in order to advance. Although Mo Jingli no longer liked Yi Ying like he used to, she was still a woman who had been with him for more than 10 years. Since he had made a promise to Yi Li, he naturally wouldn't mistreat her. She glanced at Dongfang Yu unhappily and said, what does Ing, want to go out for a walk have to do with you? Imperial Mother has already agreed, so why are you making a fuss? Dongfang Yu's face darkened as he said, I don't care. In short, the people of the Li Palace are not allowed to go out without my orders. Mo Jingli's face darkened when he heard that. He said coldly, Dongfang Yu, don't go overboard. Do I need your permission to go wherever I want to go? I haven't settled the score with you for going against Imperial Mother these few days. Don't fail to appreciate my kindness. Dongfang Yu smiled coldly and said, That's your Imperial Mother. What does it have to do with me? I don't need to give in to that old woman. Mo Jingli was about to fly into a rage, but he thought of something and finally restrained himself. He glared at Dongfang Yu and said, You must have a reason for not letting Ying, or go out, right? Dongfang Yu choked and said unyieldingly, I'm happy. If I don't say she's not allowed to go out, then she's not allowed to go out. Crazy woman. Mo Jingli couldn't be bothered with her. He pulled Ying up and walked towards the door. He called for his guards and said, Send the princess out. I'll see who dares to stop you. No matter how powerful Dongfang Yu was, Mo Jingli was the real master of the regent's residence. In the end, Yi Ying was personally escorted out of the Li Palace by Mo Jingli's guards. In the hall, Mo Jingli unhappily told Dongfang Yu to take care of herself and return to the study without looking back. Dongfang Yu stared gloomily at the empty door and didn't speak for a long time. However, it made the people around her secretly feel a little apprehensive. The people by Dongfang Yu's side now were all former subordinates of Infinite Boundless Mountain. After Infinite Boundless Mountain was destroyed, they naturally followed their young master, Dongfang Yu. Many of them had grown up together with Dongfang Yu in Infinite Boundless Mountain. However, looking at Dongfang Yu's current appearance, they almost couldn't believe that this was the intelligent yet somewhat naive young master of Infinite Boundless Mountain. In the end, they could only assume that the sudden rejection of Infinite Boundless Mountain and the sudden death of Madame had dealt a huge blow to Dongfang Yu, causing her personality to change completely. They could only sigh inwardly. Princess, that concubine Rong has already left. Should we? The green-clothed man who had just entered to capture Yi Ying asked in a low voice. Dongfang Yu snorted softly and said, Forget it. If we go overboard, it would instead arouse Mo Jingli's suspicions. Send people to keep an eye on Yi Ying. If she dares to come into contact with the people of the Prince Ding mansion, kill her. The green-clothed man said doubtfully, as everyone knows, the relationship between Princess Ding and concubine Rong is not good. Even if the people of the Prince Ding mansion really come to look for young Master Qingchen, I'm afraid they won't look for concubine Rong. Moreover, even Prince Li doesn't know. What can she know? Dongfang Yu was silent for a moment and said, That's true. However, it's always good to be careful. The people of the Prince Ding mansion have always been crafty. Yi Ying, that stupid woman, might even help others count the money after being sold. The green-clothed man nodded and said, I understand. I will send people to follow up with concubine Rong. After Yi Ying left the princely mansion, she let Mo Jingli's guards go back. Chapter 887. Yi Li played with the fan in her hand and smiled, Isn't it me? Can't you recognize me, fourth sister? Yi Ying smiled shamefully. Yi Li's appearance was too different from what she remembered. If they were on the street, she might not be able to recognize her even if they met face to face. After that, Yi Ying asked, Why did third sister come to Nanjing personally? She thought it was Yao Ji who wanted to see her. She did not expect Yi Li to come personally. Hearing Yi Ying's words, the smile on Yi Li's face faded. She sighed softly and said, Of course something happened. A few days ago, you asked Yao Ji to send a secret letter back to Glass City. What did it say? Yi Ying was stunned, What's the problem? Yi Li shook her head and said, It's not your problem. That letter was sent to Big Brother, but now, Big Brother is missing. So I want to know what was written in the letter. Yi Ying was relieved and hurriedly said, After Dongfang Hui died, Mo Jingli went to Dongfang Yu. Now all the remaining forces of the Boundless Mountain are in the hands of Dongfang Yu. Mo Jingli made a deal with Dongfang Yu. Dongfang Yu will help Mo Jingli with all her strength, and Mo Jingli will help Dongfang Yu get young Master Qingchen. Get? Yi Li frowned. This word made people feel uncomfortable when it was used on Su Qingchen. After thinking for a while, she asked, then, is it possible that Mo Jingli kidnapped Big Brother? Ying thought for a while and finally shook her head, it shouldn't be. Mo Jingli did send people to cross the river, but they came back empty-handed. Mo Jingli was very angry and quarreled with Dong Fangyu. These days, although Dong Fangyu helped Mo Jingli suppress the Empress Dowager, Dong Fangyu was also very arrogant in the residence. She did not even care about the virtuous concubine. Mo Jingli quarreled with her several times because of this, and she did not allow me to go out today. Yili frowned and thought for a long time before asking, what about Dong Fangyu? Did Dong Fangyu leave the manor these days? Ying shook her head. After a while, she came back to her senses. She looked at Yili in surprise and said, you think that Dong Fangyu kidnapped young Master Qingchen? Yili sighed and said, it's just a guess. Ying said, these days, Dong Fangyu did not leave the house. However, she had a lot of subordinates, and there were also quite a few people from Infinite Boundless Mountain in the king's manor these days. Mo Jingli didn't say anything, and no one can do anything about it. Hearing Yi Li's words, Ying couldn't help but be shocked by Dong Fangyu's audacity. Ying admitted that she could never kidnap a man whom she liked but did not like her back. Yi Li played with her fan as she pondered. After a while, he said, after you go back, find a way to let Mo Jingli know that it was Dong Fangyu who kidnapped young Master Qingchen. Yi Ying was startled, and said somewhat blankly, how am I going to tell Mo Jingli? How will he believe me? It had to be said that after these days, Yi Ying was actually somewhat afraid of Dong Fangyu. Especially after Dong Fangyu's death, every time she saw Dong Fangyu, she always gave her a gloomy and terrifying feeling. However, she also understood that she had to do as Yi Li said. Not to mention that she still needed Yi Li's help to find her child. If Yi Li didn't send people to protect her secretly, even if she wasn't killed by Dong Fangyu, she didn't know what kind of life she would have. Just look at how the arrogant Princess Xixia had been suppressed by Dong Fangyu these days. Yi Li thought for a while. It was indeed inappropriate for Yi Ying to say it. Not to mention how she would find out about young Master Qingchen's disappearance, even Yi Ying's brain wouldn't be able to think of such a complicated matter. The moment she said it, the first person Mo Jingli would suspect would be Yi Ying. After thinking for a while, Yi Li said, how is Princess Xixia now? Yi Ying snorted with some schadenfreude, her life is naturally more difficult than mine. Thinking of how Princess Xixia had suppressed her for so many years without any title or status, and then looking at how Princess Xixia was being punished by Dong Fangyu, Yi Ying couldn't help but feel happy from the bottom of her heart. Yi Li's expression was indifferent, but Mo Jingli still dotes on her more, right? No matter how she felt about Princess Xixia, at least compared to Yi Ying, Princess Xixia was better at pleasing men. Looking at Yi Ying's gloating and jealous expression, she knew that Princess Xixia had not completely fallen out of favor. And with Dong Fangyu around, even if Princess Xixia completely fell out of favor, she wouldn't care. Dong Fangyu might be very powerful, but she was too easy to be hated by men like Mo Jingli. Yi Li was sure that if Dong Fangyu punished Princess Xixia, Mo Jingli would dote on her more. You can find a way to let Princess Xixia know about this. When the time comes, she will definitely be happy to analyze it for Mo Jingli. But be careful, don't let her suspect you. Yi Li instructed. Yi Ying thought for a moment. Because Dong Fangyu controlled the Li Palace, many of the people in the Prince Ding mansion could no longer be used. But Yi Li's instructions were not too difficult, so she nodded and agreed. Yi Li saw that she was looking at her hesitantly, and thought for a moment before saying, right, there's news about your child. What? Yi Ying's heart trembled, and she looked at Yi Li in shock. Tears of excitement flashed in her eyes, and she didn't care about how they were dressed. She grabbed Yi Li's hand, saying, there's news? Really, he's really still alive. Yi Li nodded calmly. Looking at Yi Ying's agitated state, a trace of pity flashed across her heart. She said softly, there's news. Mo Jingqi didn't kill that child. We'll have more accurate news in a few days. Yi Ying couldn't care less. She nodded repeatedly, saying, I know, I'll wait. Third sister, thank you. I'll do whatever you want me to do, as long as I can see my child. Yi Li sighed softly, saying, I won't ask you to do anything dangerous. Don't worry, after we find Big Brother, I'll take you to see that child. The tears in Yi Ying's eyes finally fell, and she collapsed on the futon, sobbing. Originally, when the child was still alive, although she treated him well, she didn't have any feelings of longing for him. She would even use the child to fight for favor. But when she found out that the child wasn't hers, and that her own son was missing, and that she hadn't even seen him, Yi Ying felt like her heart was being cut by a knife. She only felt that as long as she could find her child, she would do anything, even if it cost her her life. Yi Li reached out to pat her on the back, saying, all right, wipe your tears and go back. There are still people watching outside. It's not good to stay for too long. Yi Ying finally stopped crying. She wiped her face and got up to leave. Yi Li sat in the empty temple hall and raised her head to look at the Buddha statue that was looking at all living beings with a merciful expression. She could not help but smile bitterly. Princess Consort. Zhuo Jing silently appeared in the temple hall, reporting in a low voice, there are people following Princess Consortly outside. They're from the infinite boundless mountain. Yi Li nodded, saying, we'll leave later. Don't worry about them. Chapter 888. Zhuo Jing nodded silently. After a while, Zhuo Jing asked, Princess wants Mo Jingli and Dongfang Yu to fight each other. Will that work? Yi Li sighed, we have to try whether it works or not. We all think that Dongfang Yu caught Big Brother. But we can't find her if she doesn't move. In that case, it's better to alert her. Mo Jingli is more familiar with Nanjing than we are. If Dongfang Yu really caught Big Brother, I don't believe that she can hide Big Brother too far away from her. Even if it's not in Nanjing, it should be nearby. Zhuo Jing nodded in agreement. This was the only way now. Jiangnan was neither big nor small, and the infinite boundless mountain had been operating for hundreds of years. No one knew where Dongfang Yu would hide young Master Qingchen. Send someone to keep an eye on the Li Palace. Dongfang Yu won't return and won't see Big Brother. Yi Li ordered in a low voice. Yes. Zhuo Jing whispered. Prince Regent's Palace. Dongfang Yu sat alone in the study, staring at the portraits spread out on the desk, lost in thought. Her soft eyes were full of infatuation and resentment. It had to be said that Dongfang Yu's painting skills were very good. The man in the portrait had white clothes and black hair. His expression was indifferent, like an immortal from the 9 heavens. Lifting her hand to touch the handsome face of the man in the portrait, Dongfang Yu's eyes flashed with a happy smile. Bang! The door of the study was kicked open from the outside. Dongfang Yu's eyes were cold. She looked up unhappily at the angry man standing at the door. What are you doing? Mo Jingli walked quickly into the study. Seeing the portrait on the desk, he snorted disdainfully. He stepped forward and grabbed Dongfang Yu's clothes. Bitch! How dare you play I? Dongfang Yu was startled. She unhappily waved his hand away. I don't know what you're doing. Mo Jingli, don't think that I'm afraid of you. Believe it or not, I'll kill you now. Mo Jingli smiled contemptuously. Kill me? Now that the world is so big, with the exception of I, how can there still be a place for your infinite boundless mountain in Jiangnan? Do you think you can walk out of the Li Palace alive after killing I? What's more, now that you have a handsome man in your hands, are you willing to die? Dongfang Yu's expression changed slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Mo Jingli sneered, you don't know. I sent people to help you catch Su Qingchen, but you still sent people to stop me halfway. This prince has taken the blame for you, but all the benefits have fallen to you alone. At that time, you can just walk away and live a carefree life, leaving I to fight to the death with the Prince Ding mansion. That's a good idea. Dongfang Yu, if you had been so smart when you were in Glass City, how could you have ended up like this? Dongfang Yu's heart skipped a beat, but he said without changing his expression, I don't know where you heard this crazy talk from. What do you mean? You didn't have the ability to catch young Master Qingchen, so I didn't break my promise to you. Don't push your luck. Mo Jingli's expression was distorted, and he grinned, do you think I will still believe you? From today on, you stay in the palace and you're not allowed to go anywhere. You want to put me under house arrest? Dongfang Yu stared at him with a gloomy face. Mo Jingli raised his eyebrows and said, tell me where Su Qingchen is now. He dared to catch Su Qingchen, not to let this woman be infatuated with him. Dongfang Yu was unmoved. I don't know what you're talking about. Mo Jingli didn't care. He pushed Dongfang Yu away, picked up the portrait on the table, and laughed mockingly, you haven't left the palace these days, have you? What, you don't dare to see young Master Qingchen? That's right. Young Master Qingchen is a handsome man, known as the immortal young master. How could he like a withered woman like you? You only dare to hold the portrait and be infatuated with it. Dongfang Yu's expression changed slightly, and she reached out to grab the portrait in Mo Jingli's hand. Mo Jingli, give it back to me. Mo Jingli moved sideways to push her away. Knowing that he was no match for Dongfang Yu, Mo Jingli didn't want to tangle with her. He turned to walk out, and warned, I advise you to stay in the Li Palace obediently, and don't act rashly. Do you think young Master Qingchen knows that you caught him? You don't dare to see him, do you? Ha! Young Master Qingchen is the wisest in the world. How could he not guess? Do you think Su Qingchen would rather die than have a woman like you? If I were young Master Qingchen, I would rather die than have a woman like you. You've tarnished the reputation of the Su family for hundreds of years. Ha! Mo Jingli. Dongfang Yu was furious. She grabbed the inkstone on the table and threw it at Mo Jingli's back. Mo Jingli was already prepared. In a flash, he was already out of the room. The inkstone hit the door of the study with a clang. Staring at the door that was shaking because of her smash, Dongfang Yu's expression was so sinister and twisted that it made people feel cold. After a long time, she gritted her teeth and spat out 2 words, Xia. Chapter 889. In the Li Palace, where Princess Xia lived, Princess Xia was sitting happily on the chaise lounge, dozing off. She had been suppressed by Dongfang Yu these days. Although she had King Li's protection, King Li could not accompany her all the time, let alone punish Dongfang Yu, who held all the power in the boundless mountain. Therefore, she had been very wrong these days. Today, she finally had the chance to complain to Prince Li about her. Compared to Yi Ying, who had long fallen out of favor, she had been favored all these years, although she did not have a real status. Mo Jingli did not hide many things from her, so Princess Xia knew that Mo Jingli had sent people to intercept young Master Qingchen. Although she did not think highly of Mo Jingli's mission this time, she knew how powerful Su Qingchen was. In the end, Mo Jingli's people returned empty-handed. It was not an important matter at first, but when she accidentally overheard the 2 girls talking yesterday, she suddenly had a thought and pushed this matter to Dongfang Yu. As for whether it was true or not, who cared? As long as it made sense, Mo Jingli would believe it. Just by looking at Prince Li's expression when he left her place, and then hurriedly rushed to the study. Early in the morning, he went to Dongfang Yu's place and gave her a fierce scolding. She knew that Prince Li still believed her words. Bitch, you're so relaxed. Dongfang Yu's voice suddenly sounded at the door. The coldness in her voice made Princess Xia shiver. Princess Xia stood up abruptly and glared at Dongfang Yu, who brought people in. What are you doing here? Dongfang Yu stepped into the hall, walked in front of Princess Xia, and looked at her condescendingly. Slap. Just when Princess Xixia was getting impatient and was about to get angry, Dongfang Yu suddenly raised her hand and slapped Princess Xixia's face quickly and hatefully. In fact, when men hit women, they would hold back most of the time. On the contrary, when women hit women, they would often use all their strength. Dongfang Yu was also a martial artist. With this slap, Princess Xixia's face was slapped to one side, and a few red and swollen fingerprints appeared on her white cheeks. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of her lips, and slid down her chest. You. Princess Xixia was stunned by this sudden slap in the face. She did not expect Dongfang Yu to hit her without even saying a word. Princess Xixia held her burning cheek, and her eyes were about to spit fire. Dongfang Yu, how dare you hit me? Dongfang Yu curled his lips in disdain. So what if I hit you? Who do you think you are? You're just a concubine who doesn't even have a status. No, you can't even be considered a concubine. At most, you're just a maidservant. Princess Xixia was originally a princess, Princess Xixia, but Dongfang Yu mocked you. But Dongfang Yu had so rudely mocked her. Princess Xixia was so angry that she laughed. She covered her face and gave Dongfang Yu the same disdainful smile. So what if I have no status? At least Prince Li likes me. Unlike some people, he did not want me even when I offered myself to him, and now he wants to kidnap me. You can't be thinking about men so much that you want to rape young Master Qingchen, right? So it was you who talked nonsense to Mo Jingli. Dongfang Yu gritted her teeth. Princess Xixia said proudly, so what if I said it? If you dare to do it, don't be afraid of others talking about it. You really disgrace us women. If you are afraid that no one wants you, just put up with the dogs around you. Don't lick young Master Qingchen's face. Maybe young Master Qingchen can't stand a woman like you and would rather die. Dongfang Yu spoke without mercy, and Princess Xixia was not polite either. She also mercilessly poked at the other party's sore spot. Dongfang Yu's beautiful face withdrew a trace of a sinister smile, and she looked coldly at Princess Xixia. Mo Jingli likes you. Fine. I will see how much Mo Jingli likes you. Come, drag her out and strip her naked. Dongfang Yu, don't you dare. Princess Xixia's face suddenly changed, and she stared fiercely at Dongfang Yu. The people following Dongfang Yu were also shocked, and looked at her hesitantly. Although they were all Dongfang Yu's people, Prince Li was the master of the regent's residence, and Princess Xixia was Mo Jingli's woman. See if I dare or not. Go quickly. Princess Xixia sneered. Invite Prince Li over, and say that I have something to discuss with him. The subordinate had no choice but to follow the order to invite Mo Jingli. The other two people, one on the left and one on the right, pulled Princess Xixia to the courtyard, and began to pull off her clothes. Princess Xixia was not a weak woman, and with a wave of the long whip in her hand, she began to fight with them. But her martial arts were not enough to protect herself, and she was restrained after a few rounds. Dongfang Yu had already come out, and looked coldly at Princess Xixia who could not move, and sneered. What are you waiting for? Pull off her clothes, and whip her hard for me. Very quickly, Princess Xixia was only left with a thin inner garment. The weather in the south in September and October was not warm, and Princess Xixia, who was wearing a thin inner garment, shivered from the sudden cold. However, this couldn't be compared to the pain of the whip that pierced through the air and struck his body. After the first whip, Princess Xixia could not help but scream, and fell to the ground. After that, the continuous whipping left her with no place to hide. At this time, the woman who was screaming miserably was not the beautiful woman who had wantonly waved the long whip in front of outsiders when she had just arrived in the Chu capital. Dongfang Yu, what are you doing? A roar came from the door of the courtyard, and Mo Jingli hurried over with Yi Ying. Seeing the scene in front of him, he was so angry that his face turned black. He thought that he had been angry with Dong Fangyu in the morning, and Dong Fangyu was venting his anger on Princess Xixia. Of course, this was the truth. But Dong Fangyu did not care at all about Mo Jingli's anger, and smiled provocatively. Didn't you see? What, as the regent Wang Fei, do I have to ask the prince for permission to discipline a woman who is not even as good as a concubine? Mo Jingli said coldly, I already told you in the morning, you do not need to care about the affairs of the Wang Fu. Mo Jingli had come a moment later, and Princess Xixia had already been whipped 6 or 7 times, and her inner garment was torn. Seeing Mo Jingli, it was like seeing a life-saving straw, and hurriedly threw herself into Mo Jingli's arms. Prince, Wu-Wu. Prince, you have to uphold justice for Xia, Wu-Wu. Dong Fangyu is too much. Xia, is in so much pain. Mo Jingli saw that Princess Xixia was covered in wounds, and his expression became even uglier. Yi Ying, who was following beside him, reminded, Prince, call the doctor to take a look at Princess Xixia first. Mo Jingli looked at Yi Ying admiringly, and then turned and ordered, call the doctor. You are not allowed to go. Dong Fangyu's voice sounded from behind. Chapter 890. Impudent. I have the final say in the princely manner. It's not up to you to decide, Mo Jingli said coldly. Dong Fangyu tilted his head, looking at Mo Jingli. Suddenly, he chuckled softly, looking at him with a smile that was not a smile. Prince, although Infinite Boundless Mountain's influence has already been mostly wiped out by the Western Tomb and the Prince Ding Mansion, there is still at least 30% left. Mo Jingli said indifferently, I know. Could it be that you still want to use your Infinite Boundless Mountain's influence to threaten I? If it was before, Mo Jingli might really be afraid. But now, with only 30% of their influence remaining, while it might be able to cause him some trouble, it was still not enough to make him afraid. Dong Fangyu smiled as he glanced at Princess Xixia. Princess Xixia, who was nestled in Mo Jingli's arms, couldn't help but shiver from this glance, the last trace of blood on her face also vanishing. Dong Fangyu laughed, of course not. I just want to tell Prince Li, actually, Infinite Boundless Mountain still has some people in the Prince Ding Mansion. I can give them to the prince. Do you want them? Mo Jingli's pupils shrank, his sharp gaze shooting straight at Dong Fangyu. The Prince Ding Mansion's security was notoriously tight. It wasn't that no one had tried to plant spies in the Prince Ding Mansion. But those who did either disappeared very quickly, or were ostracized outside, forever unable to obtain any useful information. Dong Fangyu also didn't mind Mo Jingli's gaze, smiling as he raised his brows, no need to be so surprised. Infinite Boundless Mountain has a foundation of several hundred years after all. They naturally have some secrets that are unknown to others. While they aren't important people, if used well, there will still be unexpected results. Mo Jingli said coldly, what do you want? Dong Fangyu pointed at Princess Xixia, saying, her. I want the prince to hand her over to me to deal with. Mo Jingli wanted to refuse, but when he opened his mouth, he couldn't find the words to say. Princess Xixia grabbed Mo Jingli's clothes in panic, Prince. Brother Jingli, that woman will kill me. Dong Fangyu looked at Mo Jingli mockingly, as if he was certain that Mo Jingli would not refuse. Dong Fangyu took out a piece of paper from his sleeve and said, in order to show my sincerity, Prince, can you take a look at my price and see if it's worth it for you to do this? Mo Jingli took the paper and looked at it with a sullen face, then put it in his sleeve. Princess Xixia's eyes suddenly widened. Brother Mo Jingli. Seeing the sinister smile on Mo Jingli's face, Princess Xixia grabbed onto Mo Jingli's sleeve in horror, as if she didn't believe that Mo Jingli would really hand her over to Dong Fangyu. Dong Fangyu smiled proudly and ordered the people around him, pull her back and continue whipping her. The two men in green looked at each other, then stepped forward to drag Princess Xixia to the center of the courtyard. Princess Xixia knew that if she fell into Dong Fangyu's hands, she would not be able to survive. She could only hold on to Mo Jingli's sleeve tightly and refused to let go. Brother Jingli, save me, no. Prince, save me. Mo Jingli looked silently at the woman in front of him, whose face was filled with horror and despair. Princess Xixia had compensated him for 10 years, gave up her status as a princess, and followed him without any title or status. It would be a lie to say that he had no feelings for her. Although he did not love her, their 10-year relationship was not fake. But, in the end, Mo Jingli could only silently pull away Princess Xixia's hand that was grabbing onto his sleeve. Seeing her slender fingers being pulled away bit by bit, the remaining light in Princess Xixia's eyes gradually disappeared. In the end, Princess Xixia was still dragged to the center of the courtyard. The crack of the whip accompanied by the woman's painful screams rang out. Even the people passing by outside the courtyard could not help but tremble in fear. Save me. Prince, Brother Jingli, don't hurt, Princess Xixia rolled on the ground in pain. After a while, she was beaten until her entire body was covered in blood and she was on the verge of death. Prince, why, save me, no one can save you. Dongfang Yu sneered. Didn't you say that your prince likes you? It seems that compared to what I gave him, he likes what I gave him more. His love for you is not even as good as a piece of paper. Hearing Dongfang Yu's unrestrained mockery, Princess Xixia only felt dizzy. Other than the burning pain, the memories of the past 10 years slowly floated to her heart. Meeting Mo Jingli's dark eyes again, Princess Xixia suddenly felt like laughing. Mo Jingli's eyes did not have the slightest bit of emotion or pity. What had she been doing for the past 10 years? Ha. Princess Xixia laughed softly. She suddenly raised her head, but her face was already covered in tears. Brother Jingli, you're so cruel, slap. Another whip came. Princess Xixia convulsed in pain, but she still could not stop laughing. Woo, royal sister. Xia was wrong. Seeing Princess Xixia's miserable state, Yi Ying, who was standing behind Mo Jingli, suddenly felt that even though she was wearing a warm peacock feather cloak, she still felt cold all over. She could not help but take a step back. Looking at the tall and handsome man in front of her, she could not help but want to stay far away from him. Mo Jingli silently looked at Princess Xixia's dying appearance. Finally, his eyes darkened and he turned to leave. Seeing him leave, Yi Ying could not help but want to leave as well. However, she was suddenly afraid of being in the same situation as Mo Jingli. Her legs could not move. She could only stare blankly at the situation in front of her. Seeing Mo Jingli leave, Dongfang Yu snorted softly and signaled her subordinates to stop. She walked leisurely to Princess Xixia and looked at her with a smile. How is it? Do you think Mo Jingli still likes you now? How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me? Who do you think you are? I want you to die with grievances. Princess Xixia raised her head. Her slightly red eyes were filled with endless hatred. Dongfang Yu, young Master Qingchen will never look at you in the eye in this life. You're a twisted lunatic, a withered flower that no one wants. Even if young Master Qingchen likes a village girl, he will not like a slut like you. I curse you that you will never be able to get him in your lifetime. Beat her to death. I will definitely be married to young Master Qingchen. It's a pity that you won't have the fortune to see that day. Dongfang Yu's pretty face darkened as she said sternly. The whip sounded again. Princess Xixia, who had been cursing loudly, gradually fell silent. Princess consort, she's dead. Dongfang Yu looked with disgust at the person on the ground whose original appearance was almost unrecognizable. Throw her into a mass grave. Don't bury her. I want her body to be eaten by wild dogs. Everyone in the courtyard could not help but shiver. Even Dongfang Yu's own people could not help but show shock and fear in their eyes. Although the previous lords of Infinite Boundless Mountain were not soft-hearted people, after all, even soft-hearted people would not be able to control such a large force. However, there had never been such a ruthless and vicious person. This woman in front of them, was she really that intelligent and naive young master of Infinite Boundless Mountain? Chapter 891. Ignoring the crowd, Dongfang Yu snorted and walked outside. When she passed by Yi Ying, she stopped and said in a low voice, "You better behave yourself. Otherwise, that bitch will be your role model." Yi Ying was so scared that she took a few steps back and fell on the ground. Clenching her teeth and nodding in horror, Dongfang Yu curled her lips in disdain. "You're so useless. Are you really Yi Li's sister? Do you think Master Qingchen will like me? If Master Qingchen likes you, wouldn't he be blind and deaf?" But in front of Dongfang Yu, even if Yi Ying had 10 times the courage, she would not dare to say that. She could only nod vigorously. Dongfang Yu ignored her and nodded in satisfaction. She turned and left. Seeing Princess Xixia being carried out without any pity, Yi Ying felt weak all over and could not stand up at all. She had fought with Princess Xixia for more than 10 years. She had thought that the woman she was jealous of was Yi Li and the woman she hated the most was Princess Xixia. But she did not expect that, the woman who had made her unhappy for 10 years, would just die like this. Help me back to my room," Yi Ying said weakly, not daring to stay any longer. Behind her, a pair of steady hands helped her up. An ordinary-looking servant girl dressed in Prince Li's maid uniform carefully helped Yi Ying up and whispered in her ear, "Fourth young miss, don't be afraid. Dongfang Yu can't hurt you." Yi Ying nodded. "Let's go back first." Everything that had happened today had given Yi Ying too much shock. Not only because of Dongfang Yu's viciousness, but also because of Mo Jingli's heartlessness. If Mo Jingli could be so heartless to Princess Xixia, who had been doted on for 10 years, then to her, who had long fallen out of favor. Yi Ying shivered and staggered back to her own courtyard with the help of the servant girl. In a mass grave somewhere outside Nanjing, a badly mutilated corpse was wrapped in a straw mat and casually thrown into the graveyard. In the cold graveyard, there was only the occasional cawing of the crows, which seemed particularly eerie and terrifying. After a long time, a black shadow appeared in the graveyard. He walked over to the corpse and squatted down to take a look. He checked the pulse and breathing of the badly mutilated corpse. He shook his head and praised, "Good technique." He raised his hand and stuffed a pill into her mouth. He didn't mind that she was bloody and dirty. He carried her and said lightly, "You're lucky to be alive. If you die, at least your corpse won't be exposed in the wilderness." After the man finished speaking, he carried the corpse on his shoulder and swaggered away from the graveyard. In a small courtyard in the city, the lanterns were lit. Yi Li sat under the lanterns and looked at the booklet in her hand. Wei Lin pushed open the door and entered. "Wang Fei." Yi Li put down the booklet and nodded. "How are they?" Wei Lin frowned and said, "Not good. Although the injuries on my body aren't fatal, it's still very dangerous. But since this morning, it seemed that she had a high fever. We can't find a doctor as good as Mr. Shenyang and Dr. Lin in Nanjiang City. If the fever doesn't subside, I'm afraid she won't be able to live." Yi Li said indifferently, "Let's do our best and leave the rest to fate. Get someone to wipe her with strong wine and see if it can subside the fever." Wei Lin nodded and said somewhat uncomprehendingly, "That woman isn't a good person either. Why does Wang Fei have to go to the trouble of saving her?" Yi Li smiled faintly and said, "This time, she really suffered an undeserved calamity. Moreover, Princess Xixia is indeed annoying, but she doesn't deserve to die. Also, she is still the sister of the Queen of Nanzhao. If I wasn't in Nanjiang City, it would naturally be fine. But since I am here, I have to do my best for the sake of the Queen of Nanzhao." Wei Lin then understood and nodded. This subordinate understands. No matter what, Wang Fei had saved Princess Xixia. The Queen of Nanzhao had to accept this favor. Has there been any movement in the Li Prince manor? Yi Li asked. Wei Lin shook his head. Not yet. The Li Prince's relationship with Dong Fangyu is very stiff. He doesn't allow Dong Fangyu to interfere in the manor's matters. In addition, our Prince Ding mansion still has infinite boundless mountain spies. Dong Fangyu gave the list to Mo Jingli. However, Li Wangfei may also know that when Mo Jingli looked at the list, she was standing next to Mo Jingli. It's just that I don't know if she saw it or not. These 2 days, she was so scared that she refused to speak. Yi Li nodded. After all, she is a woman raised in the boudoir. Give her 2 days. Let the people below also check it as soon as possible. Yi Ying is not a professional spy. At that time, she may not have gone back to pay attention to the list. In addition, send a copy of the news to First Uncle and Xiao Yao. Let them pay attention to it. You can go. Wei Lin said. This subordinate will take his leave. Yi Li's action in Nanjiang City this time was not very low-key. She had a lot of things to do. If she was too secretive, it would easily arouse other people's suspicion. The Chu family was also a famous scholarly family in the Chu state. Now that the young master of the Chu family came to Nanjiang City, it was inevitable that some people would come to visit. Yi Li pushed all of them to her subordinates to receive them. Others only thought that the young master of the scholarly family was arrogant and did not take it seriously. Most of the young masters of famous families always had some temper. Young master, Marquis Muyang's residence sent an invitation. At the door of the study, Zhuo Jing was holding an invitation and reported in a low voice. Yi Li returned to her senses from her contemplation. She raised her eyebrows and asked, "What invitation?" Zhuo Jing said, "In 3 days, Nanjiang City will hold an annual chrysanthemum appreciation party. Marquis Muyang's residence sent an invitation." Yi Li smiled helplessly. "Decline it. How can I be in the mood to attend the chrysanthemum appreciation party?" Zhuo Jing whispered. Yaoji sent the news that Helian Zhen had arrived in Nanjiang City last night. Mo Jingli and Helian Zhen may attend the chrysanthemum appreciation party in 3 days. That's why I wanted to ask young master if you want to go. Hearing this, Yi Li's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. Helian Zhen, in that case, let's go and have a look. Zhuo Jing nodded. Yes, this subordinate will go and prepare immediately. The weather in the south was warmer than the north, but at this time of year, only the chrysanthemum flowers were worth looking at. This chrysanthemum appreciation party could be said to be a big event in Nanjiang City at the end of autumn and the beginning of winter. In the city, whether it was the young masters or the young ladies of the boudoir, they all received invitations to attend. Even ordinary people could stroll around the city's flower market full of chrysanthemums and bring back 2 pots of chrysanthemums for the scenery. Early in the morning, Yi Li brought the slightly disguised Wei Lin and Zhuo Jing to the scene of the chrysanthemum appreciation party. This was a large courtyard of the Li Palace in Nanjiang City. She took the invitation and went in. As soon as she entered the door, she saw all kinds of chrysanthemums competing with each other. This made the courtyard less bleak in autumn and more colorful and bustling. What surprised Yi Li was that this chrysanthemum appreciation party was actually handed over to Yi Ying, and not Dong Fangyu, who had been in charge of the Li Palace. Perhaps she was frightened by Dong Fangyu. It had been a few days, but Yi Ying's face was still not good. Dong Fangyu sat on one side with an indifferent expression, but he seemed to be absent-minded. All the ladies of Nanjiang City were obviously used to Dong Fangyu's appearance. No one went up to look for trouble. They just surrounded Yi Ying and greeted her. Chapter 892. Yi Li found a place not far away and sat down. She drank the chrysanthemum wine and smiled as if she was looking at the flowers casually. In fact, she had been paying attention to Yi Ying's situation. Wei Lin whispered to Yi Li, ever since Dongfang Yu married into the Li Palace, she has not been good at socializing. In the beginning, she offended many people. But with Mo Jingli and Dongfang Hui's protection, no one dared to do anything to her. After that, many things in the Li Palace were handled by Princess Xixia and concubine Xian Zhao. This time, Princess Xixia died. I heard that concubine Xian Zhao was so angry that she was bedridden. That was why concubine Rong was in charge of the overall situation. Yili raised her eyebrows and looked at Dongfang Yu from afar. She asked, "Do you think she has changed a lot?" Shuo Jing nodded. She has changed a lot. In the past, Dongfang Yu gave people the feeling that she was self-righteous but did not know anything. But now, even if Dongfang Yu sat there without saying or doing anything, she still gave people a chilling feeling. You could tell by looking at how the women around her all avoided her and squeezed to Yi Ying's side. In fact, Yi Ying was more afraid. If she could, she would have stood up and run away. She did not want to be with Dongfang Yu for a moment. It has been less than half a year. This woman has changed too much. Wei Lin said in disbelief. It was not that people could not change. But Dongfang Yu's change could be said to be two extremes. How perverted did she have to be to change so much all of a sudden? Yi Li also sighed. The word love. How can outsiders like us explain it clearly? Mo Jingli is here. Shuo Jing whispered. Yi Li looked up and saw Mo Jingli not far away, surrounded by a group of guards. Walking side by side with Mo Jingli was a man in his 50s, dressed in the clothes of the Central Plains, but his figure and appearance were obviously different from the people of the Central Plains. Although Yi Li had not really seen Helian Zhen, she knew that the man walking with Mo Jingli must be Helian Zhen. Judging from the expressions on their faces, it was obvious that even if the alliance had not been finalized, it should be close. Yi Li frowned slightly. Although Mo Xiuyao had the ambition to wipe out the three allied forces in one fell swoop, Yi Li felt that it was still a bit risky. Even when she came to Jiangnan, she was still considering whether or not she should try to destroy this alliance. However, due to his trust in Mo Xiuyao, he suppressed this thought. While Yi Li was looking at Mo Jingli and the others, Mo Jingli was also looking at Yi Li and the others. Yi Li was dressed in white. She was shorter than Zhuo Jing and Wei Lin, who were standing behind her. However, her appearance and aura were far from comparable to the two of them. If they had seen such an elegant young man, they would definitely not forget him. Mo Jingli glanced at him and frowned involuntarily. He asked, "Who is that?" Mo Jingli's guards were all ordinary guards. How could they know the identity of a young man who they had never met before? One of them apologized in a low voice and left to investigate Yi Li's identity. Yi Li was confident in her disguise. Seeing Mo Jingli staring at her, she did not avoid him. She stepped forward openly and cupped her hands with a smile. Yunzhou's Chu Junwei greets the regent. Hearing the words, Yunzhou, Mo Jingli could not help but frown. When people mentioned Yunzhou, the first thing that came to mind was not that it was a heavenly treasure and was as rich as Jiangnan. Instead, it was the Su family of Yunzhou. Although Mo Jingli did not know who Chu Junwei was, he remembered that the first madam of the Su family's family was surnamed Chu. Moreover, the surname Chu was also a prominent family in Yunzhou. He raised his eyebrows and said, "So it's young Master Chu. How should I address the first young master of the Su family and young Master Chu?" Yi Li smiled and said, "Prince is too polite. The father of the first madam of the Su family and my grandfather are cousins. Speaking of which, I can barely call young Master Su cousin." This relationship did not seem distant, but it was not close either. There were not many members of the Su family, but the Chu family was an extremely large family in Yunzhou. The main branch of the family, the main branch, and the side branch, there were at least a few hundred if not 1,000. Moreover, the first madam of the Su family did not have any direct siblings. After marrying into the Su family, she did not have a close relationship with the Chu family. Therefore, it was a bit difficult for Chu Junwei to have any relationship with the Su family. Mo Jingli nodded and looked at Yi Li, pushing the faint sense of familiarity to the back of his mind. Dr. Su was a relative of the Su family, so it was not surprising that he had some similarities with Su Qingchen. The Chu family has lived in Yunzhou for a long time. Why did young Master Chu come to Jiangnan? Yi Li lowered his eyes and smiled bitterly. He said lightly, although I am the son of the first wife, I am from a side branch. Moreover, Yunzhou now. He shook his head as if sighing, there is no reason for me to stay in Yunzhou. Therefore, I wanted to come to Jiangnan to have a look. It's just a trip. Thank you for your concern, Prince. Mo Jingli looked at him for a long time and did not notice anything wrong. He nodded and said, in that case, I hope young Master Chu will enjoy himself. The Chu family is also a famous family in the Chu state. If young Master Chu wants to stay in Nanjing and do something for the Chu state, why don't you come to the regent's residence in 2 days and we can talk? Yi Li was stunned. She did not expect that Mo Jingli would want to recruit her. It was just that whether he wanted to recruit Chu Junwei or the Chu family behind him was worth discussing. Although she had no intention of becoming an official, Yi Li still pretended to be flattered. She cupped her hands and said, thank you, Prince. In a few days, I will definitely pay you a visit. Helian Zhen was also there. Mo Jingli naturally could not pay attention to Yi Li for too long. He nodded and walked with Helian Zhen into the garden. Helian Zhen turned around and looked at Yi Li and the others with some doubt. He smiled and asked, that young Master Chu seems to be very extraordinary. I did not expect that in the Chu state, other than the immortal young master of the Su family, there would be such a handsome person. Mo Jingli had no intention of talking more. He smiled faintly and said, the Chu family is a famous family in the Chu state. They have produced many outstanding people in the past. In the Chu state, how can only the young master of the Su family be outstanding? Helian Zhen smiled faintly and did not say anything. He turned around and looked back. He saw that handsome young master looking at him with a faint smile. He did not know why, but a feeling of uneasiness suddenly rose in his heart. When he looked again, he saw that young Master Chu had already walked in another direction with 2 guards. In the center of the garden full of chrysanthemums, there was an open pavilion. On the 2nd floor, Mo Jingli and Helian Zhen sat facing each other. Helian Zhen drank a mouthful of chrysanthemum wine. He could not help but frown and say, the wine of your central plains is indeed fragrant, but it does not have the taste of alcohol. The people of the northern tribes loved strong alcohol. Naturally, they would not be interested in a honey wine like the chrysanthemum wine. Mo Jingli did not mind. His expression was indifferent as he sipped the fine wine. He smiled and said, strong wine has its benefits, and this chrysanthemum wine also has its benefits. This wine needs to be tasted carefully. Although both sides had a common understanding of the alliance, they still felt disdain for each other in their hearts. The people of the northern tribes looked down on the people of the central plains. The people of the central plains also looked down on the people of the northern tribes. Chapter 893. Helian Zhen put down his wine cup and frowned. He looked at Mo Jingli and said, what do you think of my previous proposal? Mo Jingli was silent. It was not that he deliberately wanted to tempt Helian Zhen. Mo Jingli was naturally moved by Helian Zhen's proposal, but it was not so easy to decide if he wanted to go to war with the Prince Ding mansion. Even though Mo Jingli now had the whole of Jiangnan firmly in his hands, he could not guarantee that if he wanted to go to war with the Prince Ding mansion, how many people in the court would support him. Looking at Mo Jingli's hesitant appearance, Helian Peng knew that it was not that Mo Jingli was not moved, but that the bait he offered was not big enough. With Mo Jingli's temperament, as long as the temptation was big enough, he would never consider whether to be the enemy of the Prince Ding mansion or the heavens. After a moment of silence, Helian Zhen said in a deep voice, Princely, to tell you the truth, before I came to Nanjing, I went to see Genom of Gojoseon. Mo Jingli was startled. He narrowed his eyes and said to Helian Zhen, "What does General Helian mean?" Helian Zhen smiled and said, "This time I sincerely want to form an alliance with Prince Li and Genom of Gojoseon. And I have already persuaded Genom of Gojoseon. As long as Prince Li is willing to form an alliance and send troops, Genom of Gojoseon can give up a part of the benefits." Hearing this, Mo Jingli's eyes flashed slightly. But his expression did not change. Instead, he sneered and said, "Sincerely form an alliance? I'm afraid the northern tribes can't stand the Prince Ding Mansion's attack." A trace of anger flashed through Helian Zhen's eyes, but he suppressed it in an instant. He stared at Mo Jingli and said, "At present, the northern tribes are indeed at a disadvantage in the war with the Prince Ding Mansion, but Prince Li may not be able to stand it. Our northern tribes has a strong army and strong horses. Even in Dechu State, we still have close to 1 million soldiers. Reinforcements from the northern tribes could also arrive anytime. Furthermore, what good would it do Prince Li if my northern tribes were to lose?" Mo Jingli's expression turned ugly. If the northern tribes were to be chased out of the north by Mo Xiuyao, the Prince Ding Mansion would become even more powerful. And from now on, the Prince Ding Mansion could rightfully occupy the entire northern region. After all, the Prince Ding Mansion was no longer related to the Dechu State. The Dechu State threw the northern territory to the northern tribes and the northern territory. Then the Prince Ding Mansion flattened the northern territory and chased the northern tribes away. These places naturally had nothing to do with the Dechu State and Mo Jingli. After a long silence, Mo Jingli said in a low voice, "I'm afraid no one in the Dechu State's imperial court will agree to an alliance with the northern tribes and Western Hill." This was what Mo Jingli was most worried about. If the Western Hill and the northern tribes took over the Dechu State's land, the Dechu State's imperial court would not expel the enemy and restore the land. Instead, the northern tribes and Western Hill would ally with the Mahist army. This would be a cause for criticism. Helian Zhen laughed and said, "I believe these small matters will not be able to stop Prince Li. Let's see if Prince Li wants to defeat Mo Xiuyao and destroy the Prince Ding Mansion." Mo Jingli was silent, but his mind was already spinning rapidly. He naturally wanted to defeat Mo Xiuyao. Ever since he was young, he had dreamed of ruthlessly trampling Mo Xiuyao under his feet. Even though his current status was no less than Mo Xiuyao's, in front of him, he still seemed to be a level lower. Therefore, he always hoped that one day he could truly trample Mo Xiuyao under his feet, and take back everything that originally belonged to him. If the northern tribes were really defeated by Mo Xiuyao, Lei Jinting was already old, and Lei Tingfeng did not seem like he could be Mo Xiuyao's opponent. Lei Jinting would probably be defeated by Mo Xiuyao once he went to Western Hill. At that time, he would not be able to hold the fort alone, and would never have the chance to turn the tables. But now, if the allied armies of the three countries pressed on the border, even if Mo Xiuyao had the ability to reach the heavens, he would definitely not be able to resist the three countries' 2 to 3 million troops at the same time. Then the chances of victory were still very high. Helian Zhen smiled as he looked at Mo Jingli's sometimes hesitant and sometimes conflicted appearance, and said with a smile, "Genom of Gojoseon has already promised. As long as King Li agrees to send troops, he will immediately withdraw his men from Guangling City and the 4 provinces to the north. This can be considered a show of sincerity to King Li, and also to let King Li's troops pass through without worry." What does King Li think? Mo Jingli tightly gripped the wine cup in his hand, not even noticing that the fragrant chrysanthemum wine had spilled onto his hand. Why is King Li so hesitant? When the 3 of you defeat the Prince Ding Mansion, the Dechu State can also return the capital to the Chu capital. Everything that King Li has lost will be returned, and even more, King Li can obtain even more. Helian Zhen stared fixedly at Mo Jingli, and said without stopping. Mo Jingli gritted his teeth, and a trace of ruthlessness flashed through his eyes. He said in a low voice, "Fine, I will agree to General Helian's request. The Dechu state will send troops to the north in a few days. Helian Peng was overjoyed, and didn't have time to dislike the bland chrysanthemum wine in his cup. He raised his cup and said with a smile, "Since that's the case, let's first wish for our army to succeed, and destroy the Mahist army in one fell swoop." Mo Jingli was silent, and only raised his head, and fiercely poured all the wine in his cup into his mouth. Seeing him like this, Helianjun finally let out a loud laugh. In the garden, amidst the colorful and varied chrysanthemums, countless young masters, princes, scholars, and beauties were reciting poems and making couplets, laughing and talking endlessly. Yili picked up a brush and wrote a poem about chrysanthemums on a rice paper. Rustling west wind fills the courtyard, the cold fragrance of the bud makes it difficult for the cold butterflies to come. If I become the Qing emperor in the future, I will repay the peach blossoms. Slowly finishing the last stroke, Helianjun's complacent laughter reached her ears. Yili put down the brush and said with a faint smile, "Looks like the negotiations are successful." Chapter 894. Hearing Yili's words, Zhuo Jing and Wei Lin both turned to look at the magnificent loft not far away. In terms of internal energy, they were above Yili. If Yili could hear Helianjun's laughter, they could naturally hear it clearly as well. Wei Lin furrowed his brows and said in a low voice, "Young master, do you want to?" Yili smiled and waved her hand. She carefully picked up the words she had just written and dried them in the direction of the wind, just like any other rich young master in the garden. Although Yili was dressed in white and elegant, causing many young ladies to feel their hearts beat faster and their faces blushed, the two bodyguards behind her didn't seem to be any good. However, the two guards by his side didn't seem to be friendly people. Many people who wanted to talk to him stopped in their tracks. Zhuo Jing and Wei Lin looked at the people around them and couldn't help but feel admiration for their princess consort's meticulous planning. Zhuo Jing's handsome face had a 3-inch-long scar. The sinister scar, coupled with his cold expression, made people tremble with fear. Although Wei Lin had a perfect and handsome face, his head of gray hair, coupled with his orchid eyes, made people of all races come and go in Li City. The citizens of Li City were already used to it, but Nanjing City was different. At the very least, it definitely wouldn't be a problem to frighten these young ladies who had been raised in their boudoirs. Although Wei Lin and Zhuo Jing had previously questioned whether this kind of dressing was too conspicuous and would easily attract attention. However, Yili smiled faintly and said, "It's precisely because spies won't attract attention that such a high-profile person naturally wouldn't be a spy." Even if Mo Jingli racked his brains, he would never think that Yili would dress up as a man and appear in front of him. As expected, the two bodyguards, coupled with the Chu family's young master's white robes, seemed to have a unique and noble aura that stood above everyone else. Not only did the people who saw them not find it strange, they also naturally thought that this was the style of a young master from a prestigious family. They often praised the Chu family for being a famous family with a long history in the Chu state. This young master has written a good poem. Yili put down the scroll in her hand and was about to leave, and a familiar female voice came from behind her. When he turned around, he saw Dongfang Yu, who was dressed in white, standing not far away and staring at him. Yili knew that it was her face that had caused the trouble, but she did not care. She had to find a chance to get close to Dongfang Yu. Now that Dongfang Yu was willing to come over, it was naturally the best. With a faint smile, he cupped his hands and said, "Chu Junwei greets the Princess Regent." Hearing the words "Regent's consort," Dongfang Yu frowned and nodded. Chu Junwei. More importantly, the consort was a stranger whom they had only met once, and who was somewhat similar to young Master Qingchen. If she were to face young Master Qingchen, Wei Lin could not help but shudder. He hoped that young Master Qingchen had not seen such a Dongfang Yu. Yili sighed softly, and said with some regret, "One thought to become a Buddha, another to become a demon." Zhuo Jing said, "Young master means that this Dongfang Yu actually became a demon because she could not love eldest young master?" Yi Li closed the fan in his hand and said, "In short, we have to find eldest brother as soon as possible." Looking at Dongfang Yu now, she probably can't take it anymore. Let the people following Dongfang Yu keep a close eye on her. Yes. Shuo Jing replied. Prince Regent's residence in the study, Dongfang Yu looked expressionlessly at Mo Jingli, who was full of self-satisfaction, but her mind had already drifted to an unknown place. Mo Jingli stopped and glanced at Dongfang Yu, who was obviously in a daze. A trace of displeasure flashed across his face. Now, Mo Jingli's impression of Dongfang Yu could not be any lower. If possible, Mo Jingli could not wait to kill this woman in front of him. This woman had power that everyone envied and coveted, but she did not do anything and only threw herself at a man who did not even open his eyes to look at her. Not only did she use all her means, but she also became crazy, vicious and ruthless. If not for the fact that he did not want to have a conflict with Dongfang Yu, Mo Jingli really wanted to tell Dongfang Yu that as a man, the more she pestered him, the more Su Qingchen would hate her. I have already decided to form an alliance with Shi Ling and the northern tribes. Where did you hide young Master Qingchen? Give him to me immediately, I have a use for him. Mo Jingli suppressed the anger in his heart and said in a low voice. When he dared to capture Su Qingchen, it was not to give him to this woman to be infatuated with. Su Qingchen could be said to be the third important person in the Prince Ding mansion after Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li. With him in hand, many things were much more convenient. Chapter 895. Dongfang Yu's eyes flashed, and she said unhappily, I don't know. Mo Jingli sneered, do you think I'm a fool? Dongfang Yu, I am giving you face now. Jiangnan is I's place. Do you think I can't find him if you don't say I? Seeing Mo Jingli like this, Dongfang Yu was no longer polite. She said coldly, then I'm warning you. If you dare to touch a hair of his, don't blame me for being rude. Mo Jingli now understood Dongfang Yu's character. He took a deep breath and said mockingly, even if you don't give him to me, what do you want to do? Lock him up for life? Do you think all the people in the Prince Ding mansion are dead? Maybe the people in the Prince Ding mansion are already looking for him all over Jiangnan. With the ability of the shadow guards in the Prince Ding mansion, how much time do you think they need? Dongfang Yu was silent for a while. She looked up at Mo Jingli and said proudly, don't waste your time. As long as I don't want to, no one can find him. Mo Jingli finally couldn't stand it anymore. He glared at Dongfang Yu for a long time before he said coldly, Dongfang Yu, you can die with Su Qingchen in your arms. I'm afraid that Su Qingchen won't even want to die with you. After that, he didn't care about what Dongfang Yu said. He turned and slammed the door of the study. Mo Jingli walked quickly into the Li Palace. Just by looking at his back, one could see the anger in his eyes. His confidants behind him looked at each other worriedly and asked carefully, Prince, about the princess. Mo Jingli paused and said in a low voice, don't worry about her. If she wants to go out in the future, let her go. I want to see how long she can endure it. The person behind him nodded and said, Prince is wise. She can't endure it for long because of her feelings for Master Qingchen. We are right behind her, like the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Although he had no feelings for Dongfang Yu, she was still his legal wife. Dongfang Yu's infatuation with young Master Qingchen was exposed by his subordinate. Mo Jingli's face darkened even more. He snorted and left in a huff. Mo Jingli was busy with the alliance with West Hill and the northern tribes. He did not have much time to pay attention to Dongfang Yu and only sent people to keep an eye on her. Meanwhile, in the imperial court, Mo Jingli had suddenly thrown out a powerful bomb, causing an uproar. Even those who supported Mo Jingli could not help but look at the regent, who was full of self-satisfaction, as if they were looking at a madman, not to mention those old officials who had a good impression of the Prince Ding mansion. Mo Jingli had just dropped the news of forming an alliance with the northern tribes of Western Tomb. Before he had the chance to talk about his great ambitions and plans, someone from the Highness stood up and said in a low voice, "Prince, you can't do this." Mo Jingli looked at the person in front of him and his face immediately darkened. Mo Jingli had dealt with the Empress Dowager's party for so long. If he still did not know who was supporting the Empress Dowager, Mo Jingli would have lived in vain all these years. Mo Jingqi had a falling out with the Empress Dowager when he was alive. Many of the Empress Dowager's original supporters had been removed by him. Under such circumstances, there was no one else other than the Prince Ding mansion that could keep the Empress Dowager in and out of the imperial court. Therefore, Mo Jingli directly regarded the Empress Dowager's people as Mo Xiuyao's people. Naturally, he wanted to skin them alive and pull out their tendons. He looked coldly at the Highness's people and asked, "Why not?" The minister who stood up said seriously, "West Hill and the northern tribes invaded our territory and killed our people. As the regent of the Dechu state, the prince is in charge of the Dechu state. How can he form an alliance with them? What's the difference between this and acknowledging a thief as your father? How dare you?" Mo Jingli was so angry that his face darkened. He angrily rebuked. "Lord Wang is absolutely right. Prince, please reconsider." Everyone said in unison. Mo Jingli looked carefully and saw that more than 80% of the courtiers had knelt in agreement. Even the remaining 20% had expressions of disapproval. Actually, when Mo Jingli had originally agreed to form an alliance with West Hill and the northern tribes, he knew that this would be the result. But when he saw that so many people were against him, the feeling that the entire world was against him still made Mo Jingli furious. He stared coldly at the courtiers kneeling in front of him and said, "West Hill and the northern tribes are enemies of the Dechu state. Is the Prince Ding mansion not an enemy? Isn't the land that Mo Xiuyao is occupying Dechu state? I want to know, are you loyal to the Dechu state or the Prince Ding mansion?" Such heart-wrenching words immediately made many of the old courtiers in the court feel a chill in their hearts. Many of these old courtiers had served 2 or even 3 dynasties. If not for their loyalty to the Dechu state, they would have directly sought refuge with the Prince Ding mansion. Even if they could not obtain important positions, they could at least live out their old age peacefully. But now, because they had disobeyed King Li's wishes, they had been labeled as disloyal to the Dechu state. How could they not feel disheartened? Moreover, King Li's decision to form an alliance with West Hill and the northern tribes was a huge mistake. No matter who won or lost in the end, they would go down in infamy. We do not have such intentions, but we cannot form an alliance with West Hill and the northern tribes. Regent, please reconsider. The courtiers said in unison. Mo Jingli waved his sleeve unhappily and said, "I have already made up my mind. There is no need to discuss it further." As he said this, Mo Jingli's gaze swept over the little emperor who was sitting on the dragon throne with tears in his eyes because of the sudden change in atmosphere. A dark light flashed through Mo Jingli's eyes. He walked to the little emperor's side and asked in a low voice, "Emperor, what do you think of Ai's decision?" The little emperor Mo Jingli had always been afraid of this regent royal uncle. Being stared at by Mo Jingli, he immediately burst into tears. Mo Jingli glanced at him with disgust and roared in a low voice, "What are you crying for? You are the emperor. Acting like this in front of the courtiers is not proper. I am asking you a question." The little emperor was so frightened that he choked. His tear-filled face immediately turned red. He choked and said, "Royal uncle." "Woo woo, what royal uncle said, is right." Mo Jingli snorted softly and glanced at the people below. "Did you hear that? This is the emperor's intention. You don't want to respect Ai's decree. Could it be that you also want to disobey the emperor's decree?" The courtiers were speechless. The little emperor was only 8 or 9 years old. Moreover, he had been frightened by Mo Jingli for the past 2 years. Even if the Empress Dowager tried her best to teach him, it was useless. He was even worse than an ordinary 8 or 9-year-old child. But what could they say? That the emperor was still young and insensible? That what he said did not count? A few old courtiers could only secretly lament in their hearts that the young emperor was isolated and the powerful courtiers were stealing the country. Li Wang, what do you want to do? The Empress Dowager walked out from the back of the hall and coldly looked at her only son. When Mo Jingli saw the Empress Dowager come out, his face sank. He faintly said, "The imperial harem cannot interfere with politics." Why did imperial mother come to the court at this time? When the little emperor saw the Empress Dowager, the tears that had just stopped flowed out again. He looked at the Empress Dowager and cried loudly. "Woo woo, royal grandmother. Grandson is afraid." Looking at Mo Jingli's cold eyes, the Empress Dowager only felt her vision turn black. She only had Mo Jingli, this one son left. If possible, how could she not want to live in harmony with her own son? But when Mo Jingqi passed away, the two of them were too tense. In these 2 years, the Empress Dowager increasingly understood that in the eyes of this son, her position as imperial mother was not as high as his aunt, the virtuous old concubine. The Empress Dowager had been high and mighty all her life. How could she tolerate the son that she had raised to take away her power and be raised in the palace to look at other people's faces? After that, Mo Jingli had the help of the boundless mountain and was against the Empress Dowager's people everywhere. The relationship between mother and son became more and more tense. Chapter 896. However, the Empress Dowager did not come out this time to argue with Mo Jingli. She really did not understand what was going on in her son's mind. Indeed, the Empress Dowager had once wanted to deal with the Prince Ding mansion. However, even when the Prince Ding mansion was at its weakest, the Empress Dowager had never thought of going against the Prince Ding mansion openly. She had followed the late emperor and watched him spend half his life trying to deal with the Prince Ding mansion, but failed every time. He also saw how talented Mo Lufang was back then, and how stunning she was. She had also seen how her eldest son did not hesitate to sacrifice the Dechu state to suppress the Mahist army. She had also seen how Mo Xiuyao pushed the Prince Ding mansion back to its peak from the crippled prince who had been in imminent danger. Unconsciously, the Empress Dowager had a feeling that the Prince Ding mansion was not something that ordinary people could deal with. Most importantly, even if the allied forces of the three families really destroyed the Prince Ding mansion this time, so what? Would Xiling and the northern tribes push out the land of the Dechu state? Of course not. Without the Mahist army's deterrence and restraint, they would only crazily annex the land of the Dechu state. She was afraid that she would not even have a peaceful life in her lifetime. Mo Jingli did not know what the Empress Dowager was thinking. He only saw that the Empress Dowager, as his birth mother, had gone against him in all these years. She even did not hesitate to rely on the Prince Ding mansion to help Mo Xiuyao restrain him. At this time, seeing that the Empress Dowager wanted to stop his good deed, he said coldly, "Mother, as a member of the harem, it is better for you to return to the palace and rest. The matters of the imperial court will naturally be handled by me and the ministers." Or could it be that Imperial Mother really wanted to get involved in politics? I still remember brother's portrait. Mo Jingli, you. The Empress Dowager was so angry that her entire body trembled. The portrait Mo Jingli had left behind before his death was a taboo in the Empress Dowager's heart. Now that Mo Jingli had brought it out with such fanfare, there was even a faint hint of threat. The Empress Dowager finally couldn't take it anymore. Her vision turned black, and her body fell backward. Mo Jingli glanced at the Empress Dowager, who had fainted on the ground, and coldly ordered, "Imperial Mother is sick. Why haven't you sent her back for the imperial physicians to treat her? If you let the Empress Dowager walk around and hurt her body, I will ask you." Seeing the Empress Dowager being helped down, the hope in the hearts of the ministers was once again shattered. Mo Jingli looked down at the crowd and said, "Mo Xiuyao led hundreds of thousands of Mahist army to occupy the northwest, northeast, and Chu capital. He has long since betrayed the Dechu state, and is the greatest traitor in the world. I formed an alliance with the West Hill and the northern tribes in order to eradicate the rebels and help the country. If anyone has any objections, they will be punished for treason. After that, he no longer paid attention to the ministers and the pitiful little emperor, and left in a huff. In Nanjing, the most discussed topic these days was the alliance between Prince Li and the West Hill and the northern tribes to fight against the Mahist army. Among them, there were many respected elders who cried to the sky in broad daylight, saying that the Dechu state was doomed. Although the Mahist army and the Dechu state no longer had any relationship, in the eyes of many elders, it was not so easy to cut off all ties. There were many people who wholeheartedly hoped that the Prince Ding mansion would help the country and save the Dechu state. Even if it wasn't for this, the Prince Ding mansion had protected the Dechu state for hundreds of years. Even after being driven away by the royal family, it could be said that they had never done anything wrong to the Dechu state. The Prince Regent's actions were heartless, ungrateful, and immoral. Wasn't such an imperial court abandoned by the heavens? At the same time, the common people also scolded this. Although Mo Jingli wanted to ban it, he was already in trouble both internally and externally. It made his head hurt. If he forcibly banned the common people's speech, he was afraid that the officials would really force the people to rebel. Left with no choice, Mo Jingli decided that what the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve. At the same time, he issued orders to mobilize the army and prepare for the upcoming expedition to the north. In a quiet tea house, Yili sat in a side room and drank tea with a smile. Although the door was closed, the discussions of the customers outside still flowed into the side room. It could be seen how intense the debate outside was. This situation did not only appear in this inn, but also in all the other tea houses and restaurants in Nanjing. The common people did not care about the imperial court, so naturally, the noise became more and more intense. There were many people who scolded Mo Jingli all day long. Wang. Master, what do you think of these people's words? In the side room, Yaoji sat opposite, looking at the leisurely man in white in front of her with a smile. Yili smiled faintly. I'm afraid these will not affect Prince Li's decision. Yaoji tilted her head and thought, and could only sigh, isn't Prince Li's hatred for the Prince Ding mansion an obsession? If Prince Li really sees it clearly, he should know that the alliance with the West Hill and the northern tribes is not good for him. No matter whether the Mahist army wins or loses, he will go down in infamy. Unfortunately, Mo Jingli was too obsessed with defeating Mo Xiuyao. So even if there was only a slight chance, he wanted to see Mo Xiuyao defeated in front of him. Marquis Muyang's mansion has also received Prince Li's order. Marquis Muyang and Muyang will go to war together. Yaoji said softly. Yili nodded, not surprised. There were not many generals in Dechu state who were good at war. Leng Huai and Marquis Nan had already submitted to the Prince Ding mansion. Although Murongshen did not express it clearly, his actions had already proved his thoughts. Moreover, Murongshen was not only Mo Liufeng's old subordinate, but also the father-in-law of Leng Haoyu, Prince Ding's confidant. It was inseparable from the Prince Ding mansion. Although Marquis Muyang was old, Leng Huai and Marquis Nan, who were about the same age as him, were still dominating the battlefield. Naturally, he would not have any problems. Since Mo Jingli has already decided, then I should give him a generous gift. Yili smiled faintly, and took out a list from her sleeve and placed it in front of Yaoji and Qin Feng. Yaoji picked it up and looked at it, and asked doubtfully, Master, this is, Yili said in a low voice, kill all the people on this list. Yili's voice was neither happy nor angry. It was as calm as the surface of the sea, but it made people feel the danger of the deep sea. The people on this list were all important figures in Dechu State's army. Perhaps they were not in a high position, but they would have a big impact on the army if they left. But what made Yaoji feel strange was that Muyang and Marquis Muyang's names were not on the list. Yili looked at her and smiled faintly, don't be surprised. This time, Marquis Muyang and his son will definitely become the commander-in-chief of the Chu army. If something happens to them, it will be a problem whether the Chu army can still set off. Mo Jingli has already gotten involved, so don't even think about getting out. These people are not important or conspicuous, just get rid of them. Big Brother is still in Dongfang Yu's hands, don't attract attention. Qin Feng put away the list and nodded, don't worry, master. Yili nodded and asked, is there any news about Yiying? Does she know about the list that Dongfang Yu gave to Mo Jingli? Yaoji hesitated, and said in a low voice, she knows, but she won't say. Yili was slightly startled, and pondered for a moment before nodding, I know what she means. She is afraid that I will go back on my word and not tell her the whereabouts of the child. Yaoji asked, then should we try to? Chapter 897. Yili shook her head, there's no need. Yiying has never accomplished anything in her entire life. But once she has made up her mind about something, it will be very difficult to get any real information from her. Rather than wasting time trying to verify it after she tells us, it's better to get her to say it willingly. Yaoji frowned, but, if something happens to Glass City and the prince, Dongfang Yu said that it's not someone important. Then it shouldn't be someone close to Xiao Yao. Even if Mo Jingli wants to use it, he won't be in a hurry. Eldest uncle and second uncle should be investigating as well. Yili said in a low voice. Yaoji thought that Prince Ding and Mr. Hung Yu were both extraordinary people. It would be very difficult for Dongfang Yu's people to scheme against them. Otherwise, how could they not even know that Infinite Boundless Mountain was in danger of extinction? Hearing Yili's words, Yaoji no longer paid attention to this matter. Looking at Yili, she asked, after Marquis Muyang dispatches his troops, what should Yaoji do? Young master, please instruct me. Yili looked at her deeply, sighing softly, Yaoji, you really don't have to force yourself like this. Yaoji nodded with a smile, Yaoji understands young master's meaning. Since Yaoji has already made her decision, I naturally won't spoil young master's and the Prince Ding mansion's matters. Yili played with her fan absent-mindedly, thinking for a while before saying, since that's the case, when the Dechu state dispatches its troops, you can go with him. Yaoji frowned, I'm afraid Marquis Muyang won't agree. Other than the generals who had been stationed at the border for a long time, it was not allowed to bring along family members when marching to war. Moreover, she wasn't a woman like Princess Ding who was proficient in both the pen and the sword, able to strategize and command thousands of troops. It was impossible for Muyang to bring her along. Yili smiled, as long as Yaoji is willing, she will naturally think of a way. Yaoji was startled for a moment, then she smiled mildly, Yaoji understands. Thank you for your advice, young master. Young master, Wei Lin requests an audience. Outside the door, Wei Lin said in a low voice. Yaoji and Qin Feng stood up. Qin Feng said, young master, I'll take my leave first. Yili nodded and said, you can follow Yaoji these days. As I said before, you are in charge of everything in Marquis Muyang's mansion. Qin Feng nodded. Qin Feng thanks young master. Yili said softly, going too far is as bad as falling short. You should understand what I mean. Qin Feng silently nodded, turned around and left with Yaoji. Wei Lin entered and did not even bother to greet him. He said in a low voice, reporting to young master, Dongfang Yu has left the residence. Yi Li's expression changed slightly. She stood up abruptly but quickly sat back down. She asked in a deep voice, she's alone. She would just calmly do what she could do or quietly accompany the prince by his side. As for the rest of the questions, Wei Lin felt that he really didn't need to ask anymore. He just looked at Yili respectfully, saying, please tell me, princess. Yili stood up and smiled mildly, saying, let's wait and see. When Mo Jingli leaves, the Chu capital should also change. Outside Nanjing, Dongfang Yu was walking slowly in an ordinary woman's cotton dress. Beside her were two young men who were also wearing the same clothes. The group looked like three ordinary siblings who had just returned from the capital. When they reached an intersection, Dongfang Yu stopped. A trace of murderous intent flashed across her beautiful face. She said mildly, "Get rid of those annoying flies behind." "Yes, young master." The two men replied respectfully. They turned around and disappeared by the side of the road. Dongfang Yu stood by the side of the road for a long while before she smiled mildly. She turned around and walked towards another path that was completely opposite. On the quiet path, the man in the cotton dress neatly took back the blood-stained software. He returned to his original simple and honest appearance of an ordinary person. He looked mildly at the corpses on the ground. He shook his head and turned around to leave. After a while, two men in black appeared beside the corpses. They looked down at the corpses whose blood had not dried. They kicked them and said somewhat helplessly, "We lost them." The other man said, "We lost them, but that doesn't mean that others lost them." Since they couldn't be too close, there would naturally be more people following them. The man in black sighed, saying, "Let's go back and report to young master first. These people from the infinite boundless mountain are really something." "There's no need." A faint voice came from behind. A handsome young man in white walked over with two black-robed men. The two hurriedly went forward to pay their respects. "Young master." Yi Li smiled mildly, "You don't have to take it to heart. If the people of Infinite Boundless Mountain don't even have this bit of ability, how would they have the ability to snatch someone from King Ding's estate without anyone noticing? Let's go. Young master already knows the whereabouts of young master Qingchen. We'll know when we get there." Yi Li said mildly. The place where the eastern secluded mountain hid people was indeed not easy to find. Even though Yi Li seemed to know the route, they still had to take a long detour through the mountains near the capital. They only stopped when they reached an unremarkable hunter's hut in the mountains. Zhuo Jing frowned, saying, "This doesn't seem like a place where young master Qingchen could be locked up." Although there were few people in these mountains, there were still the occasional hunters and farmers going in and out. Young Master Qingchen's appearance was really too easy to attract attention. For such a divine young master like young Master Qingchen to reside in such a place, the news would have long since spread. The people of the infinite boundless mountain also couldn't possibly silence everyone who entered the mountains. That would only attract even more attention. Yi Li smiled and pointed at that hut, saying, "Look at that hut. Do you see anything wrong with it?" Zhuo Jing and Wei Lin both looked over, but couldn't see anything wrong with it even after looking for a while. Yi Li smiled mildly, saying, "Looking at the hut, I'm afraid that it's already been here for a few decades. But, look at that chimney." The two looked over, and then suddenly realized. Wei Lin said, "It seems that no one has ever used the chimney." Yi Li nodded and smiled, saying, "Even if this hut is only occasionally used by hunters, it's impossible for them to never use the kitchen stove, unless there's another world inside. But, how are we going to investigate? There might be someone in this hut." Zhuo Jing said. Yi Li said in a low voice, "We haven't confirmed whether Big Brother is here. It's indeed not good to act rashly and alert the enemy. But if we don't want to alarm anyone." This hut was really too small. It was impossible to go in and investigate without alerting the people in the hut. After thinking about it, Yi Li decided to wait first. At the same time, she pondered in her heart what secret was hidden under the hut. Was it a secret passage, or an underground palace? There had to be a suitable place to hide someone. Yi Li believed that with Dongfang Yu's feelings for Su Qingchen, he would definitely not casually hide her in a cave. After waiting for a long time, they finally saw the door of the hut open from the inside. After a while, Dongfang Yu walked out with a sullen face. Even though they were far away, the three of them could still feel that Dongfang Yu's expression was very ugly. The men and women behind her were even more silent. Yi Li's heart suddenly had a bad premonition. Dongfang Yu's palm landed on a middle-aged man who was speaking in a panic. Before the man could say anything, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground, dead. Clearly, something had happened that made her extremely angry. Dongfang Yu happened to be facing their direction. Yili could tell what she was saying from her slightly moving lips. A bunch of trash. You can't even watch someone who doesn't know martial arts. What do I need you for? Yili was shocked. Could it be that Big Brother had escaped? If so, why didn't Big Brother contact them? The subordinates were clearly trying hard to explain something. Other than the two men who came with Dongfang Yu, the others all knelt on the ground. But Dongfang Yu's anger had not subsided. She said coldly, "When did he disappear?" Yili naturally could not see the subordinates' answers. Yili lowered her eyes and thought for a moment. She asked, "Do you have any confidence in catching Dongfang Yu now?" Zhuo Jing and Wei Lin looked at each other and said in a low voice, "Our people are already nearby. It shouldn't be a problem. It's just that Dongfang Yu's qinggong seems to be very good. I'm just afraid that she will know that she is no match for us and will try to escape. It will be difficult for her to escape unscathed." Yili smiled faintly. "She's not anyone to us. Who wants you to escape unscathed? It's fine as long as she's not dead." "As you command," the two men said in unison. Outside the hunter's hut in the forest, Dongfang Yu said angrily and hurriedly, "Why aren't you looking for him? If you can't find young Master Qingchen in 3 days, be careful of your lives. There's no need to trouble Miss Dongfang's people with young Master Qingchen's whereabouts. Why don't Princess Li have a chat with me first?" On a hill not far away, a man's voice with a faint smile suddenly sounded. Chapter 898. There is no need to trouble Miss Dongfang's men with the whereabouts of young Master Qingchen. Why don't Princess Li have a chat with me first? On a hill not far away, a man's voice suddenly sounded with a faint smile. Hearing this, the faces of the people in front of the hut changed. Although this hut looked inconspicuous, there were many traps set up on the way here. They might not be able to hurt people, but once they touched the people in the hut, they would know immediately. However, this person had already quietly arrived in front of them without alerting anyone. "Who is it?" Dongfang Yu suddenly turned around and saw a man in black leaning against a tree at the bottom of a hill not far away, his arms crossed as he looked in her direction. Dongfang Yu thought for a moment and remembered the identity of this person, someone from the Prince Ding mansion. Although she did not know the name and identity of the man in front of her, Dongfang Yu still remembered that she had seen this person by Princess Ding's side. He was obviously Princess Ding's confidant. But she did not expect that while she was carefully guarding the Prince Ding mansion, Yili's confidant had already silently followed behind her. The man in black smiled and saluted. "Zhuo Jing of the Prince Ding mansion greets Miss Dongfang." Dongfang Yu looked at him calmly and said, "What are you doing here? You can't be the only one who came to the Prince Ding mansion, right?" Zhuo Jing said, "Whatever Miss Dongfang is doing here, I am here to do. I invite Miss Dongfang to come over for a chat." Dongfang Yu's face changed slightly and asked, "Yili is also here?" Zhuo Jing smiled but did not speak. Dongfang Yu's mind was racing. She knew that the situation was not good for her. Last time, in order to catch Su Qingchen, the people she sent and Mo Jingli sent had both lost 70 to 80% of their men. One could imagine how powerful the guards of the Prince Ding mansion were, not to mention that Yili was personally in charge of the Prince Ding mansion's most elite Qilin. "I'm afraid I don't have the time to catch up with Princess Ding. If Princess Ding has any business, why don't you come to the Li Palace for a visit?" Dongfang Yu said lightly. Zhuo Jing did not want to waste time talking to her. He smiled silently and raised his hand. Countless black figures appeared silently on the hills around the house. They blocked all the exits in a well-trained manner. It was impossible to escape even if one had wings. Dongfang Yu also understood that if he didn't make a move, he wouldn't be able to get out of the Prince Ding mansion. Without hesitation, he flew forward and pounced in Zhuo Jing's direction. The people who followed Dongfang Yu naturally did not hold back when they attacked her. A scuffle in the forest began. Zhuo Jing smiled as he looked at the woman who was charging towards him. He did not care and drew his sword. Although Dongfang Yu's martial arts might be higher than his, he was not afraid of her. The two of them were soon entangled in a fight. On a hill not far away, Yi Li and Wei Lin looked down at the chaotic battle below. Although Dongfang Yu and the people around him were good at martial arts, there were not many of them. This place was very secluded. It was only a place that Dongfang Yu used to hide people. Naturally, there would not be too many people guarding it. In just a moment, Dongfang Yu's people were at the bottom. Princess, this Dongfang Yu's martial arts are really good. If not for the fact that there is something wrong with her head, Dongfang Yu can really be called a genius. Wei Lin could not help but praise. It was originally more difficult for women to practice martial arts than men. Dongfang Yu was only 16 or 17 years old and already had such profound martial arts. In terms of talent, she was not much worse than Mo Xiuyao when he was young. If all went well, she might become another martial arts genius after Mo Xiuyao. She might also become the first woman to obtain the title of the #1 expert in the world. Looking at the woman who was exchanging blows with Zhuo Jing, and even suppressing him, Yi Li could not help but nod and praise. The successor of the infinite boundless mountain is indeed a rare genius. Dongfang Yu was not only good at martial arts. She was also good at music, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry, singing, dancing, astrology, and medicine. Yi Li knew that she could not be such a genius. But at the same time, the thinking of a genius was different from that of an ordinary person. Her thinking was obviously not something that an ordinary person could accept. Should I go and help? Wei Lin asked. It was not that Zhuo Jing could not deal with Dongfang Yu. Even if Dongfang Yu was a genius, she still lacked experience. There was a difference between her and someone like Ren Qining who had been honed for a long time. If Zhuo Jing wanted to kill Dongfang Yu, he would have at least 3 to 5 chances to do so. But it would be difficult to catch her. No need, Yi Li shook her head and said with a smile, she can't run. Let's go down too. Dongfang Yu had no way to escape. But the one who gave her the fatal blow was not Zhuo Jing or the people of the Prince Ding mansion, but one of the guards who had always been by Dongfang Yu's side. When all of Dongfang Yu's subordinates had been taken down and only that guard was left, when that person rushed over to block Zhuo Jing's sword for her, Dongfang Yu thought that she had found a chance to escape. But she did not expect to be greeted by 2 swords. She dodged Zhuo Jing's sword, and it only scratched her clothes a little. But the sudden attack from the young man whom she had never been on guard against seriously injured her. Clutching her chest, Dongfang Yu glared hatefully at the young man standing beside Zhuo Jing. What else did she not understand? You are from the Prince Ding mansion. Zhuo Jing said with a smile, if the infinite boundless mountain can plant people in the Prince Ding mansion, how can the Prince Ding mansion not plant people in the infinite boundless mountain? In the end, she was still too inexperienced. Even though Dongfang Yu had the highest level of martial arts in the world, she had no choice but to be controlled by others. Seeing Yi Li strolling over with Wei Lin, the anger in Dongfang Yu's eyes grew. Yi Li, it really is you. Yi Li said with a smile, I didn't want to appear here at first, but Miss Dongfang forced me to come. Since we are already here, why don't we go inside and have a seat? At this time, there was no room for Dongfang Yu to speak. Her martial arts were controlled, and she was forced to follow Yi Li into the small wooden hut beside. The small wooden hut was indeed a different world. The Prince Ding mansion's methods were naturally able to pry open these people's mouths. Especially after seeing with their own eyes how Dongfang Yu had casually killed their comrade, these people could not help but feel a sense of sympathy. Compared to the unpredictable, temperamental and ruthless Dongfangyu, Ding Wangfei, who was dressed in white and had a gentle smile on her face, appeared especially amiable. Zhuo Jing and Wei Lin used less than 7 minutes to obtain the entrance to the secret passage from these people. Escorting Dongfangyu in front, they walked for about an hour before they finally saw the light of day again. This place was actually a deep valley surrounded by cliffs and precipitous cliffs. Although Yili had a rough idea of this place based on the terrain and route in the secret passage before. But when she really saw such a place, she could not help but frown. In such a place, not to mention Su Qingchen, who did not know any martial arts, even Yili herself would not be able to leave this place without alerting anyone. Moreover, Su Qingchen did not know any Qinggong, and with his physical strength, it would be very difficult for him to climb up the cliff that was close to 1,000 feet high. How did Big Brother disappear from here? Chapter 899. When did young Master Qingchen go missing? Yili asked indifferently as they sat in a simple building in the valley. Looking at the furnishings in the building, although it was simple, there was not a single thing missing. There was a half-read ancient book on the table, and Su Qingchen's room was also neat and tidy. It did not look like someone had broken in and kidnapped Su Qingchen. The men and women looked at each other, and one of them came forward and said, reporting to Princess, young Master Qingchen went missing 2 days ago. 2 days ago? Yili raised her eyebrows. Since young Master Qingchen went missing 2 days ago, why didn't you report it to Miss Dongfang? Did you send people to look for him? The man smiled bitterly. We sent people to look for him at that time, but they did not find him in the valley, outside the valley, on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain. Young Master ordered us to look after young Master Qingchen. Now that young Master Qingchen has gone missing, we are really... Yili understood their thoughts. These people had followed Dongfangyu for some time, and probably knew Dongfangyu's methods. Princess Xixia had only ridiculed Dongfangyu with a few words, and she was almost beaten to death by Dongfangyu, not to mention that these people had lost Su Qingchen. They could only drag it out. Who knows, they might find him before Dongfangyu came. Yili glanced at Dongfangyu, who was sitting stiffly at the side. In such a short time, Dongfangyu could grow into a master that made her subordinates tremble with fear. It was really unexpected. However, now that she had caught him, it was no big deal. The infinite boundless mountain was a nail that had been buried in the various countries for hundreds of years. Sooner or later, it would be completely eradicated. In this valley, other than the secret passage, is there any other way out? Yili asked. Everyone shook their heads, and the leader smiled bitterly. Princess, even if there is a way out, it is not something young Master Qingchen can get out of. You have to climb out of this cliff. But look at the cliff on all sides. It's as if it was carved by a knife. Not to mention young Master Qingchen, who doesn't know martial arts, even people like us. Yili nodded. If she didn't use any tools, even Yili wouldn't be able to climb up such a cliff. What was young Master Qingchen doing before he went missing? Because young Master ordered us not to neglect young Master Qingchen, so as long as young Master Qingchen doesn't run away, he can do whatever he wants. Young Master Qingchen has been very well behaved. Every day, he just reads books and plays the zither. So we didn't pay much attention to it. Every day at that time, young Master Qingchen would sit on the hillside outside the house and read a book. Yili stood up and said, "Take me there." Now that these people's lives were in Yili's hands, they naturally wouldn't go against Yili. What's more, if Yili hadn't suddenly appeared with people, with Dongfangyu's anger at that time, they might have died like the unlucky ones who died first. So in a way, Princess Ding could be said to have saved their lives. What's more, no matter from which point of view, pledging loyalty to the Prince Ding mansion was much better than continuing to follow this already ruined boundless mountain. Yili smiled and looked at Dongfangyu. Dongfangyu stared back at Yili without showing any weakness. That gaze seemed to be dipped in poison. Yili frowned and said indifferently, Miss Dongfang, I'll have to trouble you to stay here for a while. Dongfang Yu stared at her and said, I want to go with you to find young Master Qingchen. Yili frowned, Big Brother won't want to see you. Haven't you harmed him enough? Dongfang Yu said angrily, I didn't harm young Master Qingchen. I just. Yili waved her hand and said, I don't want to hear what you just said. Just tell me if you want to stay here obediently. Dongfang Yu stared at her provocatively and said, so what if I don't want to? If you have the ability, tie me up. Yili's lips curled up in a smile, if that's the case. She raised her hand and a hand knife cleanly cut Dongfang Yu's neck. Dongfang Yu closed her eyes and fell to the ground. Wei Lin. Wei Lin looked at Yili with admiration and nodded with a smile, Princess, don't worry. I guarantee that she won't cause any trouble. The Prince Ding mansion had many methods and drugs to block internal energy, ensuring that even if Dongfang Yu woke up, she would be limp and unable to move at all. After leaving Dongfang Yu, the group was led by those people to the place where Su Qingchen disappeared. It was indeed the place with the best scenery in the entire valley. There was a smooth stone on the ground. Compared to the stones in other places, this stone was exceptionally clean. It was obvious that someone often wiped it or sat on it. Yili sat down on the stone and looked around. She asked, where is the book that Big Brother was reading that day? Everyone looked at each other. After a while, they said, it seems that it disappeared with young Master Qingchen. Young Master Qingchen had already caused a ruckus. How could he have the time to care about an unremarkable book? Now that they thought about it, young Master Qingchen came out with a book. But after that, they did not see the book nearby. This meant that when young Master Qingchen left, he took the book with him. Zhuojing whispered to Yili, it seems like Master Qingchen wasn't forced by anyone. Instead, he left on his own accord. If he was forced by someone, he wouldn't have been so meticulous as to not forget to take a book with him. If young Master Qingchen was taken away unconsciously, it was even more impossible. It could not be that the person who took young Master Qingchen suddenly saw the ancient book and liked it so much that he took it with him. Yili pondered for a long time. Finally, she pointed to the cliff in front of her and said, go up and take a look. Then she pointed to the lake not far away and said, go down and take a look. Immediately, a few guards in black walked to the cliff and began to climb up the cliff. Another 2 guards, who were good at swimming, slid into the water and sank silently. Princess, young Master Qingchen should not. A few guards who were originally guarding Su Qingchen thought that Yili thought that Su Qingchen had fallen into the lake. They hurriedly tried to persuade her. If young Master Qingchen really fell into the lake, his body should have floated to the surface in these 2 days. Yili waved her hand to indicate that they did not need to say more. After a while, the guards who had climbed up the cliff came down. Princess, there are footprints on the mountain. But young Master Qingchen did not go up the cliff. It would take a lot of time and effort to bring someone who did not know martial arts up such a high cliff. Moreover, the chances of being discovered by the people below were too high. Moreover, there were no traces left on the stone wall or the cliff. Unless the other party was good enough to bring young Master Qingchen up the cliff in one breath and fly further without using any force. However, even a prince would not be able to achieve such a level of skill. Yili sighed slightly. She did not have much hope at first. After waving the guards away, Yili silently stared at the rippling lake. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.